Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and The Fool.
I had a dream a few nights ago. I was playing a video game of some sort, like Skyrim or Halo or something. And it was sort of frustrating and repetitive in some unknown way. And a pop-up started appearing with like a little video ad, like YouTube or something, and it was saying, GPT-4 has been analyzing your play data. Let it play for you to like grind levels for you. And I woke up shortly after having the stream, and I was like, that's the future.
AI will play games for you.
But the games will be made... I think there's already phone games that do this, that you can have it play for you. A lot of these... I don't know what the genre is called, but there's a lot of these phone games where it
Idle games?
Yeah, I guess, like Raid Shadow Legend.
Yeah.
Where it basically just bashes numbers against each other.
Yeah.
And you don't really... Like, you can activate special abilities and whatnot, but... And there's no skill to it. Like, you won't win if you don't activate the special abilities. So you can say there's skill, except you just hit them when they're off cooldown.
Yeah.
And so it can be done automatically. And you can also press, like, 5 times speed up mode, or you can maybe have to buy the automatic mode. But a AI that analyzes your play, and then this will go... You know where it'd be used? It'd be in games like Dota. This will analyze how you play. Then it'll go online and play matches for you and get your elo up, so you don't have to grind your elo in the early game or an MMR. And
you get banned for that.
But this isn't you get banned for having an AI play for you.
Yeah.
Is there AIs that are good enough? That's a problem.
Oh yeah, there's amazing AIs.
Really?
Yeah. Open Dota was actually one of the very first AIs that Elon developed. It's a part of the same branch of the Open AI team. They started with Open Dota.
This must be recent, right?
This was 5 years ago or more.
Because back in 2015 or 16, the AI... Oh, I guess StarCraft's a more complicated game. Because AI could barely match pro players in StarCraft.
Yeah. No, the huge thing that the AIs have in...
And that was under very specific circumstances.
So there's two things with the Dota AI. One was a 1v1 mid playing Shadow Demon only. And... It could beat even the pros until the pros figured out how to abuse it, and there's a ton of strategies you could abuse the AI, so it knew how to play the game really well. And then they developed the 5v5 version, and it played the game really weirdly.
Right, yeah.
But it also could...
I remember this. This was like 3 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, 3 years.
Yeah, okay. And 3 years ago, it wasn't that good, so this must be in the last, like, 2... It happens so fast, it's hard to...
But you get banned regardless for having the AI play on your account.
Right, but...
Because they can cheat.
But if it's Valve with their patented adaptive AI, then you're not cheating, you're using their system, and then you just pay a few bucks. And it doesn't go above how you play. It just plays at your level so that you don't drop in the ranks, or you don't...
I can see some companies doing that. I can't see Valve doing it.
Because ELO is dependent upon the number of people in the system to some degree, I think. It's a bell curve, but...
Yeah, Valve also uses MMR, and it's not bell curve.
Right.
MMR is a different system.
Why wouldn't they use ELO, though?
Because they want to try to develop their own ranking system, and it's really weird.
Oh, and I guess the 5v5 might make it weirder.
Yeah. No, MMR has a bunch of bulges, and it's really weird, and they're within the bulges, you can actually get trapped, even if you're better than average, and it's because... Let's say you're on a low rank, a meta of play develops in that low rank where you can't climb your way out. So like the top of the low rank hell players can actually play at the same level as the mid rank players. It's just they can never get out of it because they're at the...
So I guess they want people to be able to play together within a range instead of having like a 200 elo gap or something like that.
Yeah. So
they want to create... zones of these are the people you play with and get used to. And...
Well, they tried to adjust it because it was like that for a while, and their adjustments worked a little bit. So they tried to make it more like ELO.
Okay, here's how it works then. EA Sports.
Yeah.
Those games, they have massive campaigns in them.
Yeah.
So now it's the autoplay button. Mm-hmm. So games like Heroes of Might and Magic and Age of Wonders, they have auto battle system where you fight. And then it tells you the results, and then you say, I like them or not, and then you can play it yourself.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if Age of Wonders does that. I think it's just a risk. You just click it and hope that the AI in Age of Wonders is incredibly good, but sometimes...
Number 4 you can redo.
Okay. So in Heroes of Might and Magic, this isn't actually part of the base game. This is a modded feature, but it plays the battle for you. And then you can, there's auto fights in Heroes of Might and Magic, but the mod lets you restart the fight. So it's that, but it does it the way you would do the fight, so it's more accurate to yourself. And in EA games, it tweaks it so that it's how you would play all the campaigns. So you have a busy time, you can have the campaign play for you. And what you can even do, oh, this actually sounds fun now, you can play against yourself from previous games. So you can play against, you know that they release a new game every year, right?
Yeah.
You can play against your 2022 team, but they play as you by the AI. Now, the problem with EA games is they're actually slightly predetermined. EA sports players have a term called something like being EA'd because it fudges the physics calculations and the shot calculations to keep the score even. So if an AI is losing by like 9 points, it'll kick across the map and it'll go in. Or if you're winning by 10 and you kick this wide open net, your player will like trip and it won't go in, stuff like that. Like, not that obvious, but
yeah.
It's like, oh, it'll be 5 degrees more off than it should be, and oh, it bounces off. They do stuff like that. I think they said they stopped doing that, but if you're playing like amiibos, right? You put them. Yeah. I think amiibos even have a feature where you can put them online and they go around collecting tags for you already. So you do that, but with I was actually amazed, like thinking about this. This was back in 2015. Machine learning was really taking off, I think.
Yeah.
It might have taken off earlier, but I think that was the next resurgence was 2015. And you were seeing, the amazing thing was, I forget what it was called. It was like quantized learning or something, where they had a breakthrough. Essentially what had happened was it would play Mario, and you would tell it, get to the end of the map. And so it would go and it'd hit a Koopa and it would die. And so then it would stop and it would go and it would jump over the Koopa and it'd fall into a pit. And then it would go and it would jump over the pit. And so it was actually learning. Like, it wasn't just learning levels. It was learning, okay, pits are dangerous, jump over Koopas, that sort of thing. But it was this very slow process. You had to do thousands of iterations. And then they introduced this tweak in 2015 or 2016 where they said, get a high score. They didn't tell it to win. And it started doing stuff like it would grab a shell and throw it in the air. And then it would hit every block. And it was exploring the level. It was having fun. It was playing. And they found that not only allowed it to learn way faster, like orders of magnitude faster than just telling it to win. It got a higher score, and it started developing strategies human players had never done. So, for example, they learned a glitch where if a Koopa falls off a ledge, and the AI runs off the ledge and hits the Koopa as they both leave the ledge, it'll actually jump up. It'll bounce off the Koopa's head by clipping through the Koopa's body, and then go on to the next ledge. And so they learned something that people playing this game for 20 years, Super Mario World, I think it was. It might have been the original, but had never learned. They learned you could just do this little thing. And with AlphaGo, I think it was, it started using strategies that no one had ever used in Go. And now, I believe I heard this is happening, Go players are studying AlphaGo because Go is a game that's been around for thousands of years. And people have written massive books on it. This is a game, maybe chess has been studied more, but there's very few games that have been studied more than Go. And people have been poring over this, and no game has been studied longer than Go.
Yeah.
There's older games than Go, but there's not much to study in something like Mancala. Well, not Mancala. The game of the chariot racing game that the Romans played. That's just die rolling basically. Yeah. There's a tiny bit of strategy, but it was able to not meet the best players, but surpass them. And so I was thinking at the time, we're going to be seeing new AI for Age of Empires, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be crazy. And there's like one war game that did it. They created an AI called Boris, which was built using machine learning. And then there's the Amiibos, which I don't actually think use machine learning. I think they have parameters you unlock through play more, it seems like.
I don't know about the hardest AI in Age of Empires is really well developed, but I don't think it's an iterative learning AI.
No, it's just coded by a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. One guy. They have one AI guy, I believe.
Yeah. And it's amazing the hardest AI,
but it's not. What he did basically was he went and he took the old best AI.
Yeah.
And, well, I don't know if he even started with that, but he basically said, okay, what's the AI doing? And then what are all the pros doing? He's like, oh, pushing deer. I can make an AI push deer easily. Okay, here you go. And then, so he just implemented all the little strategies. When back in 2015 it was, I think, Dark Age Rush was invented. He's like, okay, I'll put that in the next update. So he put the Dark Age Rush in. And then he's like, okay, Fast Castle is a strategy. I'll put Fast Castle in. So he put Fast Castle in. Yeah. So he just takes pro strats. So it will never be better than the best players.
Yeah.
Because he's just taking the best people's strategies.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting bringing up like the different strategies is Age of Empire has seen different strategies that crazy whack jobs are trying. There's the U pudding strategy. And this is something AI could come up with, where it's like, so there's a very way to play the game if you want to play it well. And all the best players play it. U pudding picks Sicilians, and they have one unit, which is really, really strong in Castle Age. And he basically doesn't play the game the way you should. He basically only mines gold and abuses the market, and he just rushes you with that.
The problem, I don't know what happened to video games. It happened to chess as well, but Magnus Carlsen thankfully fixed that. That's how he wins, actually. There isn't a way to play games.
Yeah.
Right? Like they say, oh, you have to do this build order, and oh, you're not doing the build order, that's bad. And then someone breaks the build order, and you're like, they're a genius.
Yeah.
It's like, most players aren't following the build order. Are they all geniuses? There is a way that is optimal on average.
Yes.
And knowing when to deviate from that is where the genius comes in.
Yeah, Viper talked about that in Age of Empires, where they talk about monks. Where it's like, monks seem to be this really good strategy right now. And Viper said, they're a good strategy because everyone plays safe. However, in the latest big tournament, we have these two psychos who play aggressive instead of playing safe. And playing aggressive, you don't play with monks. And they were really interesting and different.
What I've seen, I think the Viper actually is kind of not good at this, but Hera is much better at this, I think, from what I've seen. I don't watch too many of their games, but if you make them play a modded game, Hera seems to be able to adapt very quickly. Like it seems like Hera is building strategies from base principles. He's like, okay, what do I want to do? I've got these tools available to me. Whereas the Viper and a lot of other pro players, they seem to be more very good at Age of Empires.
Yes.
They're not good at real-time strategy exactly. Like the Viper, just by sheer dint of his skill, he's still very able to adapt. But there is an aspect of, I've seen when Hera plays a modded or weird scenario, he actually plays the scenario.
Yeah.
Like if the Viper, okay, you've got exploding villagers, so the Viper will be like, okay, I'll keep my villagers away from my base, I'll be careful there, and I'll send some villagers in to raid their economy, something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas Viper will say, okay, everyone go on to berries and then onto farm. Or sorry, Hera will be, everyone go to berries, everyone go to farms. We're only building villagers in town centers. We're going to have a massive army and we're going to wipe out everyone with our explosive villagers.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's a game like that, but that's how he plays. He actually says, okay, this is strong enough that I will do this.
Yeah. Well, back to the AI on that basically building up different strategies. So with the Open Dota AI, one of the things that it did, which I loved, which is the ultimate in Dota is your ability that costs a lot of mana and has a really long cooldown. So you basically want to save it for a big fight. The OpenAI is like, this is a really powerful ability. There's a bunch of creeps here. Creeps equal economy. Economy equals win. I'm going to use my ult on the creeps because it played so that all of its buildings were always on cooldown. It's like, why would I not use this? It's up. Use it now. It's a resource to be used. And they would do that against pros. And it would work for them because they had this insane different economy.
Yeah, because you're actually that's how the Spiffing Brit works basically. His exploits are actually just not following conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
They're okay, how do I want from base principles, how do I win this? And what he does a lot of times is there's some ways things break typically.
Yeah.
Like when they register a signal, so you turn something on and off rapidly, or in the case of that, it's economy is very hard to balance in most things. Yeah. So you go, like I'm playing Europa Universalis campaign right now, and I'm playing as the Celts, and you can worship a bunch of different gods that give you different bonuses. One that gives you missionary strength, one that gives you military strength, one that gives you diplomatic strength. And I always choose the economy god because you can always use gold to cover any sin, basically. Yeah. It's like, oh no, my military died, buy more troops. Oh no, my priests are weak, get a second priest with money. Like, money always covers all these gaps, and if you don't have money, bad things happen. Your country falls apart. So I always go for the money god, and if you go for money, you tend to do quite well.
Yeah.
But did you hear that there's a theory that the reason, I don't know if you heard about OpenAI, they had this mess where they fired their CEO and then they hired him and they fired him and hired him.
I heard a little about that.
They think what might, it's a rumor that's floating around, so it's not substantive, but they think the thing that might have sparked the firing was they implemented a way to do that qualitative learning or quantitative learning, whatever it was called, that the Mario AIs were doing and the Go AIs into the GPT AI. So basically they said to it, explore, have fun, and learn. Because right now, it's kind of in a point where it can surprise us with strange combinations.
Yeah.
But it can't really go past the best humans. It can't invent a new kind of mathematics or something like that. It can come to it can extrapolate, but it can't do a path that we've never taken. But this would actually allow it to be alien, I guess.
So what, they let it explore and went, fire the boss, which is the best path forward.
Well, no, it would have been more, they fired him for implementing it. Like
Daisy.
the board's whole point is to prevent Sam Altman and OpenAI from releasing dangerous AI into the world. And so they fired him when they thought they had crossed that threshold, theoretically. Yeah. And they weren't actually able. So the former CEO of Twitch became the new CEO of OpenAI. And he said, okay, my first act as a CEO, why'd you fire him? I just want some proof of the bad stuff he's done. Like, we don't have any. It's like, okay, I quit. so there was a whole mess there. And then they had 740 something of the employees say, we're going to quit if you don't put him back on.
Yeah.
Out of 770. Like 90% of the employees were like, we quit unless you bring him back. And even a couple of the board members that were responsible for firing him, including the head of the board, were like, yeah, we want him back too. And Microsoft, who the firing took place over the course of 50 minutes. They are like, hey, can you come into the office? Okay, you're fired, basically. Mm. There was no pre-warning. Microsoft was phoned like 3 minutes beforehand and said, yeah, we're firing the CEO. And Microsoft has 7 billion, something like that, tied up in OpenAI. And so the CEO of Microsoft was very angry.
Well, was he also just trying to hire him to develop theirs?
Well, he said you can come on to ours now because you got fired, basically. Yeah. You'll start up this new division. And then Microsoft is like the Holy Roman Empire. It has a bunch of like sub-CEOs.
Yeah.
And one of them put a bunch of elector counts. And one of them put out a message saying, anyone at OpenAI that wants to come to Microsoft, you have a job at the same or better pay. No questions asked. It's just so OpenAI was dead basically, and then somehow they put it back together but they got rid of. So OpenAI is a non-profit company owned by OpenAI, which is a different company, which is a for-profit company.
Yeah.
Or it's the other way around. But anyways, the non-profit is basically dead, and now it is no longer a non-profit company, basically. It's basically now a branch of Microsoft in some sense.
Yeah. No, the name OpenAI is a misnomer now.
Yeah. Well, it has been since
their public release of the masses.
Since 2018. Well, no, because GPT-1 and possibly 2 were released to the public.
Yeah.
And then they made GPT-2 or 3. I don't remember which one it was. I think it's GPT-2. When they made GPT-2...
they realized, money.
Well, no, they said this is really dangerous. We can't in good consciousness release this because then people use it to write their essays and stuff. And the funny thing is, GPT-2 is like the local language models you can put on your computer now are better than GPT-2 ever was. And people are frustrated by its limitations. But they back then were like, this is really dangerous. And now people just use ChatGPT to do their essays, and it's changing the school system. But back then they're like, this is really dangerous. And then there was an interview or a leak or something with a guy.
On the change of the school systems, I love the one thing it pointed out, which is maybe this isn't the best way to do school the way you've had doing all these essays and all that stuff. It's like, maybe go a little back to the Greeks of, well, not certain parts of the Greeks, but back to the Greeks of actually like talking with the students and assessing their skill through that.
The problem is we've made school a necessary part of society, I guess. Yeah. And to do that, you need
a lot of teachers.
You need a huge amount of teachers, and we don't have the resources for it, or we don't want to dedicate the resources for it. But that might slowly change. essays even back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, they used to be more, how far away are New York and Chicago? Or there was one SAT question which was something like, name all the highways you would take to drive from this state to this state if you pass through these three states.
A lot of people would feel that today.
And it was completely about rote memorization.
Yeah.
And now there are questions like, on the SAT, it's like, okay, there is a well that has no bucket. How do you get water out of the well? They have questions like that now.
Yeah.
And they're harder to mark, but they're, it is one of the theories for the, what's it called? The Flynn effect. IQ has been increasing over time. Because if you break IQ down into dimensions, most dimensions on the IQ test haven't changed. Just lateral thinking has changed. It's gone way up. And like creativity, basically. Well, not quite creativity, but problem solving, I guess, but in a broader sense, which is kind of what this jump with AI would be. I guess it'd be that problem solving. Yeah. But yeah, now the question is, okay, so you have these AIs playing games for you now.
Yeah.
So now you're designing the games to be more grindy, and the AI can overcome the grind. So it's a microtransaction for the AI. So like you're playing Assassin's Creed, right? But everything's got higher levels than you, so you can't one-shot them. That sucks, but you buy this AI for $1. Well, it's expensive service, so maybe you rent it out for like $2 a day or something. And it'll go and kill stuff for you until you're high enough level that you can do the main storyline. And look, it plays like you, so it's not going to get unfairly overpowered. It's basically like you're doing the grinding work.
So Valve released a documentary. It's actually really good, about how they started Valve and their first game, which was Half-Life, and how they made it. And during that time, they released a documentary. It's the 25th anniversary of Half-Life, which is kind of shocking to realize that game's older than me. But they also put Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2 on sale for $1 each. So I bought Half-Life 1, I bought Half-Life 2. I've beaten Half-Life 1. It was an incredibly fun game. It's a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
But still, like, usually not my cup of tea so much.
That's where they introduced the Havoc engine, I believe.
Yeah. But it's super fun. And then Half-Life 2 is like just blows out of the water. Like Half-Life 2 is so much more. Like the very start of the game is them showing off their physics engine. And it's the same engine as Gary's mod, which I'm slightly familiar with. But there's literally like, you can move these blocks around. Here, use the gravity gun to fling things and exploding barrels and rolling it.
The Valve engine was overhauled at some point.
Yeah.
So, and did they port the games to the new engine?
No.
No, okay.
No. The first game is very much in its engine. You can tell the difference between the engines. And that's one of the big things about both games is how... So the first game used Quake's engine, and they tweaked it a huge amount.
Mm.
So it explains in the documentary, basically, Gaben and the other founder of Valve were working for Microsoft. And the one guy said to Gaben, I want to quit and start a video game company. And Gaben said, let's do it. And so they both quit. And they started, and they took some people with them, and they had a friend who worked on Quake. And that guy's like, I really like you guys. Here, have the engine for Quake. You can use it to make your video game.
Oh, wow.
And so they're given, like, a video game engine.
So Half-Life 2 is made in the Valve engine, whatever that's called. I forget at the moment.
Source,
yeah. Source engine. But Source engine isn't used anymore.
No.
It's the Source 2 or something now.
Yeah, Source 2. Dota runs on Source 2.
Yeah, and so I think Gary's mod does as well. I think they brought it over or something. But Dark Messiah Might and Magic also is on the Source engine.
Yes, and that's one of the things is it feels very familiar, the Source engine, because I've played Might and Magic.
And Stanley Parable as well, I believe.
Yeah. And same with Portal.
Yeah.
But
so does it hold up the first game? Because
oh yeah.
So a lot of people, they worry that it was insanely ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Like graphics and physics, it was way ahead of its time, and that's why a lot of people really liked it. And also, Valve does storytelling in a way that video games all could, but for some reason only Valve does. Yeah. Only Valve and Larian sort of do, where the characters walk while talking.
Yeah,
it's revolutionary.
Valve,
but
Half-Life 1 super holds up.
Because that's interesting that it managed to, because people that were playing it at the time, it's hard for them to tell, right? Because they're biased, but yeah.
Yeah, so one of the design philosophies of... There's two things that I came across when playing, because I've played other older video games. And you know the frustration of getting like lost in a map because the map's like laid out strangely, or you just can't figure out the puzzle? One of the things that I realized while I was playing Half-Life 1 is This game is incredibly popular for a reason. They want you to be able to beat the game. They're not trying to make it a grind of frustration game. So what am I missing in my thinking here? And so you stop and you think about it, it's like, okay, that's what I need to do.
Yeah, I just watched a review of...
And it's amazing that you can actually trust the game. Like, because a lot of times at that point where I got stuck, I'd get frustrated and look up a tutorial, like, how do I beat this? But with this game's like, no, I trust the game makers. What do they want me to do?
So, is Half-Life 2 the game you can beat by not doing anything?
I don't know.
Which one do you start on the subway car?
That's Half-Life 1.
Okay. Yeah, so if you don't move at the start of the game, G-Man or whatever will leave, and then he'll come back and say, okay, thank you for waiting. And then you're done the game.
Huh.
Yeah. I think that's the game where it does that.
Yeah. One of the other design philosophies of Half-Life 1, this was Gaben told his team, is every 10 seconds, there has to be something. And it's not like, there has to be a fight every 10 seconds, but it's literally, you walk along and you see a scientist get dragged into a vent. That's all it needs to be. Or you walk along, and there's a vending machine making an odd sound. And it's like, it's for every 10 seconds, every 5 seconds of play. There just needs to be a little detail that actually makes it worthwhile walking around. Also, another thing about Half-Life 1 is, what is his name? Can't remember at the moment. But your character runs at like 35 miles an hour.
Gordon
Freeman, yeah. Dr. Gordon Freeman. He runs really fast in the first game. And like the movement of the game, you were just zooming around. You're taking out the monsters. You're doing the things. There's like these finicky puzzles, but like compared to other games' finicky puzzles, like this is a limit of their engine. This isn't finickiness for frustration's sake.
Is Quake the Fortnite guys? Like Unreal?
I think
Epic?
It might be. I don't know.
I think Unreal. What was that game? Was the game just called Unreal?
Might have been.
Unreal Tournament. That was made with the Quake engine, I think.
Yeah.
And that was based on Doom.
Yeah. What's also kind of insane is, so Half-Life 1 had a multiplayer. That multiplayer turned into CSGO. And one of the things that I didn't realize is, you know how Valve is kind of famous for hiring modders? Like Dota, CSGO, Gmod?
And Team Fortress.
So most of their programmers in their team for Half-Life were Quake modders. Basically, they're like, we need people who know how Quake engine works really well. And so they hired these brilliant modders who did things in Quake that no one else could do, and they changed the game of Quake. So it's like you could interact with NPCs, and they did a bunch of things, and it's just insane.
It's neat when they do it.
And that's always been Valve's thing, is we hire the modders.
It's neat if that works.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, Valve is also, I think, like, their game group has never had more than, like, 200 employees.
Like, RimWorld, all his employees are former modders, right?
Yeah.
I think, for the most part at least. And, of course, the downside is you have games like, well, it's so forgettable I can't remember its name, but the people that made Project M stopped making Project M to make their own platform fighter. No, Brawlhalla is a different game. Uh-huh. It was the one where you had the totem pole people that you could switch between, and you had the...
Oh, yeah.
The orc lady. And,
yeah, Brawlhalla was actually interesting.
Yeah. It wasn't really a platform fighter, but it's... Well, it is, but it's very different.
Yeah.
But then this game was called something forgettable, and the game is forgettable to play, and they have, like, Wu Shan or whatever was the only interesting character in the game. And the totem pole people are... It's a neat idea, but I didn't enjoy playing as them.
Yeah. Oh,
So you're talking about Valve in relation to the AI.
Yeah. I was just saying that you're talking about this horrible hell it sounds like coming to video games.
And just look where it was.
I'm just saying, like, I've played Half-Life 1. I'm playing Half-Life 2. They are so fun. I really, really like both of them. And it's such a old, like, Half-Life 1 is such a old engine that has so many limitations, yet even with that, it surpasses so many modern video games.
So I was watching this review of Tears of the Kingdom, and the guy was saying that the tutorial, it was good. It's a bit too long. Like, it's a couple hours long, but it's good, and it gets the job done. But if you're doing a replay, then it gets annoying. And I had this sort of moment of, like, aha, where I thought... And I felt bad almost for younger gamers. Like, obviously you can go back and play the old games, right? But you have this idea of, you got to do your tutorial before you do... It's kind of how school works now, too. It's like, okay, we'll teach you how to do this, and then you'll do it, instead of go out and do it, right?
Yeah, well, so Half-Life 2, like I said, its tutorial is it has a new engine, it has a brand new physics engine. And so its tutorial is literally you do it without realizing you're doing it. Like one of the very first things you do is you get off a bus and you're basically getting put into the new prison colony city. And one of the bad guys, the bad guy polices, you're walking along and he has his little magneto stick and he slaps a can off a trash can that's staying there and he says to you, pick it up. And it's sort of like a power play of him. And you go, okay, and you press E on it, and you can now pick things up, and you couldn't do that in Half-Life 1. And you put it in the trash can. And that's taught you, that's how you do that. And it's just this very simple thing of, like that little thing, it's like pick it up. And it's not, press E to pick up the thing, and then you've done the tutorials, just pick it up. And then you're going along, and one of them throws an explosive barrel at you, and it explodes. I had knowledge that this is an explosive barrel, I have to get out of the way. But like too, in first player, it's like, oh, the barrels explode now. Okay, I've learned that. And so it's always just, this is how it goes.
It was making me think, like, it's so sad that video games have become this formula. Okay, you have the tutorial, you have the gameplay loop, you have the plot, you have the story, there's no experience. There's no, this is expanding the realm of human experience.
Yeah.
Like, you look at Mario or Half-Life or all these games where you didn't know what to expect in a way.
Yeah.
And it's not that, like, Mario is a game you can play endlessly. You can keep coming back.
Yeah, well, like on the thing.
So it's not about new discoveries exactly.
Not knowing what to expect.
But it's what's possible.
I've watched people play Gmod for years with TTT, Trouble in Terrorist Town, and so many of the weapons are ported over. And so I thought I basically knew everything I was going to encounter. And I'm playing this game, and you kill the Antlion Queen, and then one of the one-eyed, three-armed aliens gives you this orb, and it lets you summon the smaller Antlions, and then you can throw the orb, and the swarm of them will go and attack.
But let me put it this way, like, you know that now, right?
Yeah, I know that now.
But would you play Half-Life 1 again?
Half-Life 1, I would play again.
Yeah, so it's not, you don't know what to expect in terms of not surprise. You can know every detail of the game.
Yeah.
But if you pick up two video games, you're like, yes, Half-Life 1 has the Antlions, but that doesn't mean video game 2 has the Antlion thing.
Yeah.
You know nothing about this game. Maybe it's a detective game where everything's frozen in time, and you have to navigate around by clicking and dragging your mouse to move because you only have one arm and no legs, and so you have to physically drag yourself across the screen, and all the objects, and you have no inventory, you just pick objects up and interact with them. Maybe they'll make a game like that. Or maybe they'll make a game that you can only command it using text. Or maybe it's like games have been reified, I think is the term. It's like all modern games, here's the way to look at it. All modern games are mods of older games rather than new games. So this review of Tears of the Kingdom, it was a different one I was watching too. He made this great point where he said, Tears of the Kingdom feels like a ROM hack of Breath of the Wild. It doesn't feel like a new game. It feels like a ROM hack, or it feels like a mod, or it feels like the Master Quest. Like, I don't know if you know, but Ocarina of Time had a standalone Master Quest you could get. It was like its own game, and you could play that, and it was way harder and had stuff done differently. And that's kind of like what Tears of the Kingdom is like to a much bigger extent.
Yeah.
But
well, there's a game called Lethal Company. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay. Do you know what Phasmophobia is?
Yeah.
So Lethal Company is kind of like Phasmophobia. If you have 4 party members, you land your spaceship on a planet, you go out, and you're trying to collect loot before nighttime falls, and you get back to the spaceship, and there's monsters trying to kill you, and basically most monsters one-shot you. And what you're saying about all games are like, we don't have the games of dragging yourself across the screen or you're controlled by text anymore. One of the things Lethal Company does is if you're in the ship, then you have monitors. And to operate all the monitors, you actually have to use ASCII typing sort of thing of like, observe your friend, let's say your friend's Jeff. So observes Jeff.
Yeah.
And then Jeff's walking along, like, there's a turret in front of me, and it's like, that's turret 2, right? Turn off turret 2, and they'll turn off turret 2. And so one person is basically playing a adjacent different video game.
Right.
Where they actually have to type and interact like it's an old black and
Actually,
green
there's that
screen.
horror game, I don't know if you've seen it, where you control little drones and you go into ships and you can only control them through text and stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess To be fair, what I should say is that there's always going to be innovators, and indie games are always going to have their innovators. And there's probably more indie games innovating now than there ever was back then.
Yeah.
And it has the same problem that songs have, where people say, wow, music from 10 years ago or 20 years ago is so much better. Because all the bad music is forgotten.
Yeah.
And all the good music remains.
No, there's a lot of really bad old video games.
There's a lot of garbage games, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still planning to make a review of Neverend.
I don't think that's bad.
Its ratings are really bad on a lot of
Really?
sites. Yeah. And you can only get it with the abandonware. It's not available in any shop.
I think it's the only JRPG I've ever liked.
It had a really fun system. That's why that's one of the things I do know is I'm a lot better at video games now than I was. I have more time to commit to playing them.
Oh yeah, so you should do a review of Conic 2 as well.
No.
It'll be super easy now.
No, I'm not playing Conic 2.
I watched a playthrough, and the guy said, okay, so to play this game, I'm gonna do as easy as I can. So I'm gonna play as the guy with the two-handed sword that starts in the Wasteland of Demons. He's like, okay. So
isn't the Viking easier?
So there's like a 20% chance you'll die at each encounter in the first screen. And then, from then on, run away from every encounter you can. And don't go near this section because they'll kill you. And you have to do this for about the first few hours until you get enough gear that you can start taking out the weakest. It's like, how did anyone ever... It's...
I was watching a video of Lewis and Ben play Apocalypse. And I actually understand how Apocalypse works now, of the real time and not real time. I would never want to play Apocalypse. Like, it doesn't look fun. That's not my kind of game.
Yeah, it was a bit of a mess of development too.
Yeah.
They didn't have an engine that could really handle it, and they wanted to add everything. And the kitchen sink.
Apocalypse the game they have needs to be a turn-based game. Like, you can pause, but no, XCOM Apocalypse actually...
Apocalypse has a turn-based mode.
Yeah, it has a turn-based mode, but the non-turn-based isn't actually playable.
Yeah, but the problem with Apocalypse is that your squad has like 40 dudes, or 20 dudes, I think. So
yeah.
So turn-based takes forever.
Exactly.
But you have to be incredibly patient in order to. Now, if there's someone that likes that game, that's the best game ever.
Yeah.
But there's very few people that want to... Like, I don't think most people want to be fighting forever in an XCOM-like game. They like the back and forth. You need the... A lot of games are adding now, like, battle modes where you just fight... I don't know, you just have a bunch of fights in a row, right? Like a sort of survival mode or something like that. And I was thinking if Heroes of Might and Magic did that. Ugh. Heroes 5 kind of did that, but it was just to test out fights more than anything. But the fighting of Heroes of Might and Magic isn't where the game is. It's not the overworld either. It's the back and forth.
Yeah.
And without it, it's not... Like, Age of Wonders, a guy named Capitan Yolo, German guy with a Spanish name, made a map called... What do you name it? It was something like Battle Mode. And then he made a mod called Battle Mode, I think. And then people took it and made a map full of scripts and a mod for it, and they improved it. But they were inspired by him. And it's basically you have an army that you can get in 90 turns with unlimited resources. It's something like that. And then you go into the center and you fight. And so it's just a great big brawl. And I don't find it fun at all because it completely loses that interplay. It's this like imagine Half-Life mod where they make a bunch of combat rooms in a row. It's like, no, I want or Doom mod where it's just all about combat. Doom is a game about finding secrets in a huge amount, and also getting ambushed and recovering from the ambush and resource management. It's the interplay of everything.
Yeah, I haven't played Doom, but I have played Bolt Gun, and Bolt Gun's basically Doom, and that's exactly it.
And I think an important part, I think this is what happens, I think it's like called reification, where you have a game like Doom and people say, oh yeah, I love the shooting, it's great fun. And so they make a game where you shoot monsters, and they don't realize, no, this wasn't a game where you shot monsters. This wasn't a resource management game. This wasn't an exploration game. This wasn't a find and secret game. This was you getting put in the shoes of a Marine in a spaceship overrun by demons. So everything is done in the process of being a Marine in a spaceship overrun by demons.
That's interesting you say that design. Bolt Gun is very much an homage to the old Doom game. However, what Bolt Gun feels like is you're a space marine on a planet overrun by demons, and they really make you feel like a space marine.
So you don't say, So one thing I see a lot with, I don't know if you watch Iron Pineapple's videos at all.
I've heard of him. I don't think I've really watched him.
He does a bunch of Dark Souls like reviews where he plays Dark Souls clones basically.
Well, that's how I know of him. He also reviewed Elden Ring. Okay.
And the thing that annoys me, and I don't know if he's saying it ironically or not, but he says, "Oh, here's your bonfire. Here's your Estus flask." There shouldn't be a standardization of, like, those are key to the soul of Dark Souls and Demon Souls. And I think even like Bloodborne and Sekiro having those same things is kind of weird, just because now Bloodborne changes it. You only get health back by killing things, so that's different. Sekiro, I don't actually know what you do, and I don't know in Elden Ring if they do the souls.
They have the campfire. So
they have the camp. Maybe they just found something that worked in well, I think Elden Ring as well is basically Dark Souls 4.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's probably fair to say. And I think, well, actually, I think you could say Elden Ring is Demon Souls 5, and Dark Souls is Demon Souls 2, and on like that.
Yeah.
And Sekiro and Bloodborne are the side games. They're the Gaiden games. But actually, they're a Japanese company, aren't they? They could have called it Dark Souls Gaiden. But if you're a different company making a different game, like Liza P came out recently.
Yeah, I played. So they did a game before Liza P, which I can't remember its name, but you're like a plague doctor, and it's a Souls-like of that term. It does a few things differently, but it's basically Liza P is their bigger game.
There's actually a surprising amount of plague doctor Souls likes. So
yeah, but this company, they're the company that made Liza P as well.
Right. But even then, like, let's say they make the plague doctor one, you shouldn't have an Estus flask and a bonfire. You should, okay, what's Pinocchio? You should say, okay, so Pinocchio has the blue fairy, so there should be an interplay between him being human and being a robot. And maybe, like, actually, you could steal this straight from Dark Souls, because in Dark Souls 1, at the very least, I haven't played the others, you're an undead that can become human again, and being human gives you way more health and lets you do some stuff, but it's a limited resource, and then if you die, you lose it. Yeah. And so they could have something like, and him lying. Now, Liza P, they did try to incorporate line a little bit, I believe, but that should be central.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be Dark Souls with a sprinkle of line.
So Thyme Seas is the name of the game.
Right, okay, yeah, I know that. That's the one where you lose all your health and then you kill the guy and you get it back when you...
Yeah.
With all the green...
Yeah, so you kill people and you get your health back. So that's slightly different. They do have health flasks, but...
And then the damage you do to foes isn't real until you hit them with your magic claw.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to damage them with green. So that's slightly different. Also, P basically got hit really hard by a giant knight, and so he's lost all his memories. And so a little girl's trying to help him recover his memories, so he's going through his memories. And so his bonfire is he sits down in a chair.
Right, but my point is that's a Dark Souls mod.
Yes,
Both of them are Dark Souls mods.
Yeah.
You're not starting with, I want to make a game about Pinocchio. Okay, what does a game about Pinocchio entail? Instead you say, I want to make a Souls-like, what skin do I put on it?
Yes.
I'll put on a Pinocchio skin. And that doesn't mean they're bad games.
No.
It just means that games have become reified. Like I said, they've turned into genres.
One's a lot easier to make as well.
But there's no creativity in it. There's no creativity in the creation of the game. There's creativity in the details, obviously. But it's a shame that people say, oh yeah, this is the tutorial bit. And so and I also think what happened is, because people think this is the tutorial, you ignore it, sort of. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I think you go, this is the tutorial, so I don't really care, I'll just move on. And so it doesn't matter what they say or what I have to do. It doesn't matter how that weaves into the greater world. This is the tutorial, I'll get it over with, and then I'll play the game. And if you're going to do that, right, I think, like, Outward, I don't know if you haven't played much of it, but they actually have a tutorial in the main menu that you click on, and it sends you into a tutorial. And then you do that tutorial, and then you play the game, and it just expects you to know how to play.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to make the tutorial that detached already, like, I think Tears of the Kingdom's... The Sky Island? That was fine. Yeah. But then the, like, hour of going back and... So, one of the reviews, the guy was saying he didn't know anything about the game, and he didn't go to the starting zone where you get the hang glider and you get taught about how to go into the underworld and how to navigate with the light things. Instead, he'd been just playing the game, going around. He'd gone down a few wells. He'd gone into a few caves. He was like, okay, this is kind of neat. He saw another well. He's like, oh, neat. He jumped into the well, and it was a well that led into the deeps. And so he's like, what? Why I'm falling? I'm still falling. I'm still falling. I'm still falling. And he goes down. It's pitch black dark. He has no idea what to do. And he's like, okay, wait. I've got these light seeds from that one cave. Okay, I'll use those. And there's a big glowing thing in the distance. Maybe I can make it there. So he's struggling to get there, and he's navigating through the darkness. And then he compared that to if you followed the tutorial route, sort of. You jump into the hole they tell you to, and you're right beside the light route, and it illuminates the caves, and you never see... Breath of the Wild does the best darkness for a third-person game I've ever seen, because Link is 100% visible, even in the dark. He glows, sort of, but he doesn't light anything around him.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered why games don't do this. Like, darkness doesn't really translate well onto a screen, except OLEDs I've heard are fixing this slightly. But typically, LEDs don't handle darkness very well. And so I've always thought what you should do if you want your game to be dark is just limit the draw distance.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you have a draw distance of 2 feet if you have a torch. Like, let's say you're playing Skyrim. You have a draw distance of 2 feet. If you pull out your torch, you have a draw distance of 5 feet, but the illumination doesn't change.
Minecraft mods have done that for ages to simulate darkness properly, because you can always turn up your brightness. And that's what actually the blindness effect does.
Right, so they just make it black and just bring it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think... Because then you're just squinting or you turn up your brightness. Yeah. Dark Souls, I had this huge problem when I first played because they said, get the darkness until the symbol's just barely visible. Yeah. And I don't know if I had eagle eyes that day, but I was like, hey, okay, it's just barely visible. And then I was just walking through, I was just walking against walls. It was so dark I couldn't see a thing.
So whenever I see that thing, it's like where it's just visible, I ignore that just visible and I just let the bloom be brighter because I want to see your damn game.
So I restarted Dark Souls recently. And I was just like, nope, I want to see. And this is so much fun. Yeah. I can see stuff when I'm doing stuff. And it's still dark and oppressive. But if they want... Because there's a few... Not many, but there's a few moments where something is hidden in the darkness and that's important because you're supposed to have to find a clue to figure that out. Or there's like a creature that comes out of the darkness. But if they just said, okay, darkness means no draw distance, then you could have the best of both worlds, sort of. And I don't know why there's this... it's funny as well. It's always the games you can't see that do the whole... Like, Twilight Princess as well, right at the start, said, make the symbol just barely visible. And then Twilight Princess was this muddy mess.
And on the games that, this is a game, how do I do that? So I've recently been playing, Conquest of Elysium 5. And
is the AI better in that one?
You set the AI to Butler, and then you encounter every once in a while, and...
Is Butler weakest, or...?
Second weakest.
But it doesn't die?
You create 3 AI, and one of them will live.
Right.
And also, you play only against barons. Don't play against any other... Like, you can play against barons, the Senate's okay to play against, and barbarians are okay. But the baron's fun, because you get to be a mystical magic person, and then there's like an army of just 200 dudes. And so you can have your dragon fight 200 dudes. But what I was getting at with Conquest of Elysium, and to a greater extent, Dominions.
Yeah. So
Conquest of Elysium is their D&D world.
It's the battle version of...
Well, it's Dominions. It's not the battle. It's their D&D world. That's actually what it is. So, but what they are, Dominions is we want to make fantasy. Like, we want to make mythology and have people play mythology on a scale with armies.
Yeah, it's like a 4X game, yeah.
And so that's what they did. And Conquest of Elysium is, alright, we want to take Dominions, and we want you to be the heroes that are inside Dominions. And so Conquest of Elysium is you're the heroes, and then there's D&D elements thrown in. And when you look at the reviews of Conquest of Elysium 5, there's a lot of people that are saying, like, I don't get this game, it's not quite for me, and it's fine, it's not for them, they don't get it. But one of the things that really stood out to me, this one guy was saying, this game is terrible balancing, like the fights aren't fun.
Like what's the company's name? Icewind or something? Yeah. As if they would balance their games.
It's like, the fights aren't interesting, you just like have troops smashed together, you can't even control them like in Dominions 4, like you can't even give them vague commands, you can sort of select what spells happen, your things just get killed, and like, it's just all this little things. Then someone below that said, and it's like, he said, they put no effort into this game. And someone below that said, have you read the descriptions of every single creature in the game? This game isn't about trying to win.
It's a role-playing game.
Yeah, it's not a game where you try to, like, especially Conquest of Elysium, because Dominions actually has a goal you can win, and it's hard, But Conquest of Elysium, I just stop playing games once I've reached a goal I've had.
Have you
Or like if my main wizard that I had from the start dies, it's like the story's over.
or if you're playing Conquest of Elysium, well, you lose if you're.
No, if every single one of your heroes dies, is how you lose.
Maybe they changed that. I think in number 4 you just lose if your main one dies.
Now, if you have another commander, you can still keep playing. I've played a lot of both.
Well, that's way better. But then how come the AI dies so easily?
Because it's a little idiot.
But have you ever had like I was playing against a Aztec, whatever they're called, the demonologist, the mech or whatever, the people that make like the dragons that are the crystal dragons, which are super overpowered.
The Burgermeisters.
Yeah, and like so all of those, bunch of people died right off the bat. I was playing the Necromancer, I think. I was having great fun fighting the Aztecs, and then the demonologist ended the world.
Yep.
Like, why is that an option available to the AI?
That is why I say you only play against the Barons.
It's like, oh yeah, let me just open this portal to...
So they added the Kobolds, and the Kobolds are really interesting. So you play as a shitty little Cobalt cultist, and you slowly get more and more Kobolds, and they just spawn in your camps.
Like kobold, like the goblin, or like cobalt, like the ore?
The Goblin.
Okay.
The little yipping dragon.
Okay, so not cobalt, the blue ore.
Yeah, no. The little dragon men.
Well, goblins, but yeah, the kobolds. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are little dragons.
Right. I think that might be D&D specific.
That is D&D specific. Anyways.
Careful there. Whatever, Conquest of Elysium.
Yeah. It's spread so far out of D&D, they don't have control over it anymore.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that escape them. Anyways.
Well, actually, no. Kobolds are fire spirits, though, I think. So that kind of works. Yeah.
And your goal is basically to go to mines. So mines throughout the world for kobolds have gems in them. And gem deposits are actually like different colored gems. So you spread out through the world and you collect gems. And you set up new kobold hatcheries and strongholds in those locations. Then once you get enough power, your kobolds can summon dragons. You don't control the dragons, though. They just sit in your bases where you summon them. Every once in a while, they'll wake up and go on a rampage. And then your final spells, you summon an Elder Dragon. It's just a dragon that's a little more powerful. And that's how you play the kobolds. And so the kobolds are basically, you try to get as many mines as you can, and if there's something too strong, you hope that your dragon wakes up and takes it over for you, and then you can send your kobold horde in. So I was playing, having a great time with kobolds. Then a troll mother showed up and killed every single dragon. And it's like, you can only have one big monster as a kobold, with the dragon, you can't control it. And you can have multiple dragons, but they can't stack in their lair. And so the troll mother showing up and killing all my dragons, it was just like, alright, I'm not letting trolls stay in my game anymore.
Yeah, I want to sell Conquest of Elysium for anyone that hasn't played it, because this game, actually, like there's revolutionary games, right? Like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom's, Ultra Hand, Elden Ring, although Demon's Souls did it way back in the day, but these games that sort of people are like, wow, I didn't know games could be this way, right? Conquest of Elysium is a game where So I'm very sensitive about spoilers in a lot of ways, right? Yeah. Like people say, but why I think I was thinking about this. I think the reason I'm so sensitive about spoilers is there's so very little to spoil.
Yeah.
But Conquest of Elysium has so much depth. You will never know about. So, for example, necromancers at a high level have the power to open up a gate to the world of the dead. Now you think this is just a fast travel option, right? You walk through. It's basically a copy of the overworld. You're like, okay, it's this fast travel option. Except everything that has ever died in the game. Spirit is in that world, in that spot, and there's like the cities there. And you can even have situations where you own a city of the dead, which is almost impossible to take, but you can take one. And then a massive battle happens in the real world, and everyone dies and comes down, and then there's a huge army suddenly in the underworld, and they'll kill you. And then, okay, I need to escape. So you summon an earth elemental, and you use the earth elemental to tunnel through the earth to the plane of the earth. The earth elemental dies, and then you're stuck in rock. And
yeah, so demonologists. One of the strategies you can do with demonologists
is end the world.
Well, you can end the world, but also, if your enemy's really strong, you can have your cultist. I mean, it has to be your highest tier wizard. But you can have him sneak into the enemy lands, go to a village, and open up a gate to hell, and then have him run away. And demons will start pouring out of the gate of hell, trying to take over the world.
Yeah.
Or if you play as the cultists, you can enter into the astral plane, and you can summon eldritch horrors. One thing I didn't realize, though, is there's gates in number 5, and they let you fast travel throughout the world. That's literally what they do. So you enter a gate, and it brings you from one location to another. However, they might be a broken gate, and you might not know they're a broken gate until you travel through. So I had my starting army, walk into it, and they teleport into the astral plane, and a bunch of phase spiders eat them. It's don't think of it as a 4X. That's actually Conquest of Elysium isn't a 4X game of like you're trying to take over a world. It's like Dwarf Fortress.
Yeah. Well, Elysium, in the lore of the game, is the most dangerous continent on Earth.
Yes.
And so you're a bunch of these. You're the most powerful beings in creation, basically trying to conquer this island called Elysium. But it's so dangerous that like some of the early dangers, which can wipe out like a little army, are the deer.
Yes.
They're giant carnivorous deer.
Moose will knock down city walls so wolves can pour in.
So I think this was added in Conquest of Elysium 5, but it might have been in the other games. Because, like, again, there's so much stuff, it's hard to know what's in the game. But there's probably, 500 spells in the game, maybe more?
Oh, way more.
And they're not just, this one does 3 damage, this one does 4. They're,
I had a demon, and he had a spell called Meteor Shower. So it literally covers the map in flaming rocks that randomly hit your side and the enemy side and kills everything.
But it's not just damage. Like you can have the item like the Cauldron of Bran, for example. Yeah. This is also in Dominions, and it has infinite food.
Yeah.
And so now your groups don't need food anymore.
So one of the spells the Hag Mother has, which depending on your army is really dangerous or has no effect, is she shoots a wave of aging. And so if you have a bunch of humans, they'll all turn to old men and die. But if you have a group of demons, they actually get... No, it's not the demons camera, but one of them gets more powerful if they get hit by the aging wave, because the older they are, the stronger they are. If you hit undead with the aging wave, they just don't care.
Yeah, so the level of simulation in this game. So the Niflheim, they're giants, obviously, but...
This is Dominions have Niflheim.
Aren't they in...
Oh, they're not in Elysium.
Okay. But it's the same combat
it's
engine,
the same
I think.
Engine, yeah.
How does this work? If you cut off both their arms...
They will hop and...
Well, they will kick you instead, but there's something about... I think it's...
If you cut off their arms and if you cut off their legs...
They become more dangerous because...
They start biting.
Because their bite is more dangerous, but they don't use their bite against most units because they're too tall in order to be able to bite them. So they can only bite you if you cut off their legs.
Yeah.
But their bite's super dangerous. And this is every unit, and you have thousands of units on everyone's side.
Now, I remember in Dominions, I had a very small battle, and my captain, he was rank 3, and he had tons of magic items, and he got hit by a spell and it blew off both his arms and one of his legs. And I was reading a little battle report, Noah's turn says what they're doing, and he bit someone in the throat and killed them.
This is hardcore.
He was.
Or we were playing a game. This was Dominions, but your armies could instantly kill my armies, basically, for whatever reason. So I was sending assassins at you, but my assassins were dying to your bodyguards. Yeah. So I was giving my assassins enchanted necklaces, which would summon dryads if they were hurt. And so you were getting swarmed by multiplying units, basically, exponentially multiplying units, basically. But then the dryads would catch fire because your guys were all... No, my guys were lava guys, I think. I don't remember how that worked. But anyways, so in Dominions 5, I think it was added, but it might have been in 4. So there's thousands of spells, and summon earth elemental, summon water elemental, those are all there. But if you summon a fire elemental or a water elemental or an earth elemental, they're actually pulled from their corresponding plane. So if you're in a war, let's say, on the plane of fire, and there's an army of fire elementals marching towards you, you could teleport to the plane of water, summon a fire elemental, and you might just get the leader of that army into the plane of water, and then you can head back, and he's gone.
Yes, if you've ever read Malazan Book of the Fallen...
It's the closest thing to that.
Dominions has Malazan Book of the Fallen, especially Dominions 4. It has to be made in Dominions 5, which is sad. But Dominions 4 has the Malazan mod, which is one of the best mods.
It's perfect for the setting.
Yeah.
It also has Warhammer mods, which are also perfect.
Conquest of Elysium 5 has a Scourge Mage, and what he does is he steals the souls of his citizens through pillars, and these also steal the life force of the land. And so you build pillars, you build pyramids, and you build mountains of doom. And they steal the life force from the land, turning it into deserts, and then ghouls start spawning land, and settlements with populations slowly disappear, leaving only ghouls behind. And he summons these giant whirlwinds of destruction that are his strongest units, and these giant scorpions and spires. So you literally slowly desertify the land and spread out.
Yeah, that's the thing as well. You have a village. Oh, neat. And so if you're playing as the burghers, you can you can like put a burger settlement there as well, like your hobbits basically.
Yes, you put a settlement there. If you're playing as the Baron, you can turn it into a hill fort.
Or you can hire troops from there, I think.
Yeah.
And then, but if you're playing as the undead, you can kill it and then you can raise it as undead, or you can send vampires in and they can level up by going to the village.
Or you can turn everyone in the village into ghouls.
Or you can do a sacrificial ritual and level up your heroes.
Yeah.
Like
and the warlocks like just destroying villages to summon demons. And the occultists the cultists want shore villages so they can get Innsmouthian mutants out of it.
The Aztecs turn them into, they just enslave everyone, and then they have armies of blood slaves.
Yeah.
Where they have thousands of units on the field and they're all just slaves.
Yeah.
And so everything is like 1,000 things.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the Cobalt interaction now is the mines used to just give you money and iron. They're now, if you have kobolds in the game, that's where they want to be.
The problem, this isn't a problem with Dominions so much, although the AI isn't very fun to play against in Dominions, but in Conquest of Elysium, the problem is, as the player, if you're not careful, you can just get ambushed by a bear and you lose the game. The AI seems to just wander about freely and they just lose everything all the time. Because it's so easy to lose.
But it is such a different game. It is literally mythology of the video game.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Then you have... So it's kind of like a way to classify games. They're like either games or they're mods for games.
Yeah.
It's like every Assassin's Creed game after... I don't know.
2?
Yeah. Like Brotherhood, I think people say a lot of people really like, but it is very similar to the second game.
Here's the thing. So there's mod for games and there's a continuation of the game. Like you could call it a mod, and that's another thing. But like, so Halo 1 and Halo 2, well, they're actually different games slightly. Like they're innovating on each other.
But it is still like it's not. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing, right? It's just the bad thing comes more when you're going through the motions. Like you're okay. So you get to the point where you say, okay, why did you add a bonfire to this plague doctor that respawns him? Let's say.
Yeah.
It's like, well, because that's what a Souls-like game has. Yeah. Okay, but he's a plague doctor. If he dies, he's dead.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll have to come up with a story reason for why that isn't the case.
Yeah.
But instead, why not do the other way around and say, okay, we won't have the bonfire, or okay, there's like 10 plague doctors, and when you die, you're a new plague doctor, and then he has to find the body of the old one and take his gear, and then he continues on his legacy.
Yeah.
And so you start thinking, it was I think it's Miyamoto actually who said
that would actually be a really cool. I know we're saying you're not trying to do it, but a very cool like. To do it like a Souls-like, but honestly, just separate from that. You just made me think of a thing, which, you know, in that roguelike, actual roguelike, where you can be as a tourist and you go down and you can fight your own dead self.
Yeah, a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah. What would be a really cool feature for a game is the idea of your hero dies, and then you immediately respawn. However, just this nether guy just walks up to the corpse and loots it, and then you're playing as the person who just looted his corpse, and it just comes in for like a different angle, and that's who you're playing with now.
I've been looking like that. I've been looking for a game like that for ages. There's very few. So there's the Proteus mod for Skyrim, which does that. If you combine it with Shadow of Skyrim,
yeah,
it does that. But it's
buggy.
No, it's not actually. Proteus is the Legacy of the Dragonborn mod, which I don't know if you remember that, where you could have like a bunch of different characters in the same world.
Oh yeah.
You'd go into this room and you like stand in there and you could make him your follower. He rewrote everything and now it's super stable and
Legacy of the Dragonborn was so unstable.
And yeah, so Proteus is super stable. And then Shadow of Skyrim is very stable, although I've found so many ways to break it just because there's so many ways to break it.
Yeah.
Like if you get killed by a summon under the wrong circumstances and stuff.
If you run into a wall too hard. That actually broke it. I ran into a wall too hard, ragdolled off a cliff into a river, and know how the game, if you're in constant ragdoll, doesn't quite register?
Yeah.
I got stuck against a rock.
So it just never ended.
Yeah.
So they made their mods compatible, and so there's a setup you can do where every time you die, your body stays, and then you create a new character, and they go out, and then you just start playing in the world from a new spawn location. But if you go to where you died, then you can loot your old body.
I was just, with the guards, have you noticed there's a lot of Dragonborn lately?
A lot of Dragonborn around these parts. Well, the Dragonborn DLC already did that, so.
Yeah. It added one out of Dragonborn.
There's one too many. Yeah, they already. Yeah,
He's an ancient dragonborn who was soul bound to an eldritch horror.
I think in Proteus you can also make yourself not dragonborn, so
Yeah.
you could potentially do that. There is, I believe, the Ground Gives Way, which is a traditional roguelike, possibly does it, but I'm not sure. Soul Lash 2 does it. I wish it was Soul Lash 1, because Soul Lash 1, the goal of the game is to end the world. You're an evil god, and I just think that'd be really cool if you destroy a village and you die, and then the next guy comes and he has to continue destroying the village. Dwarf Fortress Adventure Mode, and then but Soul Ash 2, you're a good guy. It still works. Like you can mine a tunnel through. I was watching a guy play where he couldn't figure out how to leave the dwarven home where he started as a dwarf, so he just mined out of the entire mountain, and then if he dies, there's now a new.
Did that mod continue for RimWorld, or was it added in where you could go back to the world that was of your dead colony and restart on the spot?
I don't know, because RimWorld would be a perfect candidate for it. I don't know why it isn't an option in RimWorld. Like,
because there was a mod that sort of did, but it did it really bad.
it doesn't need to stay loaded, right? Because you can just make it a save game. Like you can
instance it.
Yeah, I don't know why they don't do that actually, because I think that like RimWorld simulates the weirdest things that take up so much of its power. Like every single person that ever walks onto your map is simulated all the time.
Yeah.
Which makes the game over the course as you play over the years in game really bogged down because it's keeping track of like the injuries.
So if you want to keep stability, kill anyone who walks onto your map.
No, it still keeps track of like their decaying and like.
And then throw their body into an incinerator.
Yes, or you get runtime cleanup, which deletes any colonist that hasn't been on the map for more than 100 days or something like that from the world, and then it just refreshes them.
And does it keep like their seed name in, and that's it?
No, it just deletes them. It deletes not colonists. It deletes all people in the world that you haven't seen for more than 100 days, that sort of thing. But it uses so much energy devoted to stuff that doesn't matter most of the time. Like it's really neat if a guy that you shot in the eye comes back with an eye patch. That's really fun. But it happens so rarely, and I think you could simulate that. You could fake that on a degree that would take like 1% of the power.
Shadow of Mordor does that, and
yeah, and it's not simulating where they are at all times.
Yeah,
Skyrim is keeping track of where everyone is at all times, but there's less to keep track of. There's their health and their position basically.
Yeah,
and their level, I guess. But RimWorld has like body parts and stuff. Yeah, there's not many games.
There is a Skyrim mod that I only saw as a result once. It's the faction mod, which there's skirmishes going on throughout the world and battles, and it basically keeps track of who's winning. And so you could just be walking around at one point, and the Forsworn have won, and then they're just everywhere. And you attacking like Forsworn cats makes them weaker in their faction.
Yeah, I was thinking it'd be neat if there was a mod that said there's 500 Forsworn, 1,000 Imperials, and 1,000 Stormcloaks,
and 2 million guards in outposts.
But if you just kill them, they eventually stop coming back. I think that'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. There's 2 million Whiterun guards. There's only Whiterun.
Just Whiterun. Just infinite Whiterun guards. But if you have there's a Souls-like where you have 5 or 6 people you can play as, and every time you die, you can't play as the person you last died as, and then you get the other person back when you go back to the body, which is kind of neat.
And if all of them die before you recover it, you lose the game and it deletes itself.
Maybe. I mean, that wouldn't be the worst thing, really. The original Legend of Zelda... Well, actually, no. All the 2D games, maybe, are kind of like that. You don't play as a new person, but you get sent... You could be. Yeah. They could very easily make it that you die and there's a new hero. Because now you keep all the gear, though. But I think that would be kind of an interesting Zelda game if you just die and then you're a new person from the village and you have to go back and get the boomerang off the body or something. Because the world entirely resets every time you die. You just have all your gear. You can very clearly see Dark Souls was based on Zelda.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking here, just play as Zelda and Link dies. And then, you know that boy who stops you from going to the Great Deku Tree, who like has his arms and he slides back and forth? You just play as him, how his animation's still stuck in that sort of T-pose slide.
If you think about, what was it called? The Knight? There's a game where you play as an army of knights trying to rescue a princess, and it's a platformer.
Oh yeah, and it's like Lemmings.
Yeah, but every time you die, you leave a body, and then you can use that body to like get over spikes and stuff. Yeah. You could imagine Mario's like that. But the problem is, what I would like is though is the world changes, right? And that's why you need a roguelike to do it with.
Yeah.
Because it's really interesting if you see the tunnel you made in the mountain, or you see the burned down village, or that's the other thing games have totally missed, right? I was watching a review of Magic and Mayhem, which is a very old game by the creator of XCOM. Yeah. And much like the original XCOM, it's a 3-dimensional game with, gravity, with flame physics, with smoke physics, with like you can if there's a village of goblins, you can like shoot a lightning bolt at a wall and then the building will collapse onto them and kill them, or you can light the roof on fire and it'll spread to the rest of the village. And like you don't have games that have that level of interactiveness anymore. And I think the tile-based games need to come back.
Well, so in this documentary, one of the things you'll notice about Half-Life is if you hit a wall, it leaves a decal mark of the bullet.
Yeah.
If you hit with a crowbar, you get a sound, leaves a mark. You can break glass. If you go over to a vending machine and you beat the pulp out of it with your crowbar, a bunch of soda cans will spill out of it. And that was Gaben saying, I want a result that the world has to be interactable with.
Yeah.
Whenever you do something, there has to be a reaction. The reaction doesn't have to, like, the wall explodes, but there has to be a reaction. There has to be a world you can interact with. And one of the things he was told about his game, someone's like, well, it's not very realistic. Realism isn't fun. Interactivity is. And
that's why I like the immersive sim genre so much. It's not actually about immersion. It's about being able to do stuff.
Yeah. And
like being able to be free.
One of the best things that Gabe said from that documentary is he's talking about they're trying to the company that was publishing their first game, because they weren't a publisher at that point, said, you're behind on it, we need the release now. And they said, no, it's not done yet. And Gabe said, if a game's not done, it's just a little longer. Suck is forever.
And that's why there's no Half-Life 3.
Well, he didn't justify like that, but it's a very true statement of suck is forever. I mean, maybe not as much with
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky, and there's like a few other games, but still, they have that legacy of the game sucking. Whereas, yeah, it's just not out yet. I'm sorry.
I've heard people say Cyberpunk is a lot better now, but actually, Cyberpunk's a great game for an example of it's very like you liked it quite a bit, I believe.
I really liked elements of it,
but to me, like when I look at it, I haven't played it, so I can't be certain, right? When I look at it, it just looks like a video game. Like it looks like it's got all the video game things. It's got the level up. It's got the skill tree. It's got the damage numbers. It's got the guns. It's got the gear. But there's no like you compare it to Half-Life, right? Half-Life is an experience. This is just I made a game. It has all the right bits, so it's a game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Half-Life is definitely an experience where that's a game. Like I think you could Portal. You can very much compare Portal and Half-Life.
Yeah,
they're very similar feeling in that. Like Portal, sure, is a tech demo, but there was something there in it.
Well, when I look at there's
like especially Portal 2 is let's put someone in a factory.
I think Yahtzee talked about this, where he said there's a lot of games that try to be Portal, like the Talos Principle and Superliminal and whatnot, and they have this twist at the end, and they have things get slowly worse. But what they don't realize is Portal isn't a puzzle game.
Yeah,
like you do puzzles in the game. But it's about escaping a test facility.
Yeah.
You are a superwoman, sort of. Well, you're like a cyborg, I guess, or just wearing fancy shoes.
She's just wearing fancy shoes.
Escaping a test facility. It isn't like okay, we need. Now they did need a bunch of puzzles, but that's not how you make the game. You say, okay, this is going to be a test facility where you can do this. So what elements do we need now? You don't do it the other way around. And I think we talked about this before a bit, where the creator of Pokemon loved collecting and fighting rhino beetles or whatever the Japanese beetles they used to fight. And so it's like, I want a game like that where it's like beetle fighting. He didn't go, I want to make a game like Pokemon. He wasn't basing it on a video game. He was basing it on an idea.
So here's funny though about the creation of Half-Life is we want to make a video game. That was what they wanted to do, actually. And so they hired they were told you need level designers to make a video game. So they hired a bunch of level designers. And so level designers were just building levels. And they didn't know what to do with them, so there's just a ton of different levels. And then eventually they like sort of had a game, and then Gabe came along and said, this is nothing. We have to scrap everything and start over again.
Yeah.
And so like a few elements made it through, and then they started combining it to create a story. And one of the great things Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2 is Half-Life 1, you're a scientist in a facility, they do an experiment that goes horribly wrong. And then Gordon Freeman is basically trying to survive. He is a highly competent man who's trying to not get killed. And so you're going along, you're trying to escape the facility, and it turns out that the problem is far bigger than you thought. And so one of the scientists sends you to Zen to fight an alien to stop the alien invasion they accidentally triggered, and you kill the alien. Then the G-Man shows up, and he puts you into a train, and he basically knocks you out in stasis. Game 2, you get off a train, and the whole world's changed. Like, what on earth is going on? And then someone recognizes you as Gordon Freeman. They're like, oh, it's you, Gordon Freeman. The Resistance needs your help. And he's like, we'll get you to the hideout, we'll get you through the city. And then the bad guy's like, it's Gordon Freeman, he's a criminal, we have to stop him. And you're just like, what on earth is going on? I killed the alien, I stopped the apocalypse, and now I'm the messiah that the evil government hates? And so he's like dealing with this new world and like trying to adapt to that. And it's really cool if you're figuring out what happened in the interim of getting on the train and getting off. And you're going through these things and you're trying to help other scientists from Black Mesa. And that's as far as I've gotten. But I don't think I have to say spoilers for Half-Life.
I've seen full playthroughs of both games, so.
Yeah. Well, I'm just the audience in general. Yeah. I don't think I have to say spoilers.
But the thing as well is, well, it's funny because someone can be born after a game is made, like you were with Half-Life 1, and it's still a new experience to you.
Yeah.
Or like games are funny because people talk about that game's so old, right? But you don't say, oh, I'd never read the Bible, it's so old, or I'd never read like the Brothers Karamazov, it's so old, right? Yeah. Like these are the greats that have lasted. Or Bach music, man, that's so out of date. Or, like even video games, it's like a 2-year cycle, right? Like I can't believe you listen to Elvis, right? Like they weren't recorded on good machinery. There was
actually that is one thing that Valve did do, is for both Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2, they made sure they ran on new machines. They did a bunch of updates to both games to make sure they could run on the newest machines without problem, because that's the thing that older video games do have trouble with.
Yeah, it is a unique, semi-unique problem. Music actually has that issue too with recordings. But, music has another interesting issue where none of Bach's music has time signatures or notation, I believe. What do you call it? Not notation, but it doesn't say like you should play it jauntily or allegro or any of that sort of thing. It's just, here's the notes.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of ways.
Is that why the variations are called the variations?
Because there's so many ways to interpret his pieces. Yeah. And that's why Goldberg is considered the guy to go to for Bach.
His variation of this is songs like happy, 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 happy.
Yeah. And not just his variations, but other stuff he's done.
Yeah.
It's like, he's the guy that we go to when we want to get like an idea of Bach. Now, that Bach might have been playing his stuff totally differently.
All his songs could be an El Rey Girl or whatever it's called, of like the very sad, slow somber.
Yeah. And there's always little... And music is about interpretation to a degree. Yeah. But you contrast that with recorded music. There's people that they like... I think it's like gramophones for the... like scratchy quality or like they like...
I like that too, like... As actually... So I'm in a choir, and we are practicing in a local church. And for one of our songs, we have a bagpipist come and play. He played his full-size bagpipe inside the sanctuary, and one of my eyes stopped working. I couldn't hear over on my ears. And like I was feeling nauseous, I was having trouble focusing on everything. However, I had a different experience with bagpipes where like a bagpipe at Remembrance Day was playing in an open space that could handle sound and I wasn't close to them. And that drone, you get hit by that drone and you feel it. And that drone doesn't appear in recordings of bagpipes. Like listening to bagpipe music without a bagpipe playing, I don't like the sound of bagpipes. I like the feeling of bagpipes hitting you and you realize that the Celts are charging down the hills and you're either running along with them or they're about to kill you.
What I noticed about watching Rumi Official a lot was he doesn't know the lyrics to any songs. And yet he knows the producer for like every song ever made. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's a bit weird. And then I noticed what he talks about. He's like, I love the part where it goes up here and it comes down and you hear them go like, yada, yada, yada. he looks at words not for their lyrical content as a poem, but as how does that make the song sound if you have to rise and fall with this word? If the vowel spacing is like this, or a word with a lot of hard T sounds, how does that make the song sound? Yeah. And he doesn't listen for repetitiveness, he listens for layering. So he's like, okay, how did they mix this song? And that's really important to him. And so there's all sorts of different layers of interpretation of it.
I don't have as deep analysis of Rumi, but I will look up covers of songs because I don't want someone just doing the song the way it was done. When I look up covers, I want people taking the idea and changing it slightly. And for certain songs, like, I want their covers to see if they can expand on the idea. And a lot of covers I'll listen to and it's like, oh, they missed the point of the song. And so I don't like those covers. But then this person really got the point and they actually did it better.
Yeah, like The Sound of Silence is a famous example.
Yeah, and so Dragon Ball Super has their main theme song. And in Japanese, you hear this song going. It's called Ultimate Battle. And the Japanese singer is literally just making up noises and grunting at the microphone at certain parts of the song. The official English translation, they localized it. And like the quality of also the like official English one's really bad. And the guy like gave it his all, but it's just not that good. And then there's a cover of the English version where a guy went back to the Japanese guy's gruntings of he's like ka 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 ka, and that's not a word in Japan. He's just making sounds. And I hear that English version, and that guy nailed it better than the original Japanese. Like it sounds like Goku pumping himself up for a fight. That's what the song, and it's just so good.
And it's a different different people are going to like different versions. Yeah. Like I've gained an appreciation for Avenged Sevenfold to a degree, which is a heavy metal band where I don't really like their music. But there's a band called the Melodica Bros on YouTube, and they remix songs in totally different ways to the point that they're different genres of music. And it lets you actually appreciate different. There's also an Irish musician, I forget her name, but she takes songs and she makes them really mournful. And she took Living on a Prayer.
Yeah.
And she's singing it in a really mournful sort of way. And you go like, geez, this is actually quite the song. Like it's about these people whose lives are falling apart and they're just trying to stick together. And
was the one thing that was amazing, I've shown you this, it was the acoustic version of Take On Me, where the guy played it again when he is 50, and it's very slow. It's like, there's nothing to say, don't know what you're saying, but that's life. And it's like the song of an old man reflecting on his life instead.
Yeah, there's this old guy, he's like really old, he's not 50, he's like, I don't know, he's like 80 or something, but he was singing this song about everyone dying and you eventually die and leave me behind, and I think it's meant to be this sort of, not a dark song, but he's singing and you're just like, just hitting you. And man.
I think I should look for covers of the band Power Snake.
Power Snake.
So I think they're a Norwegian band, and they basically sing about Thor. And so the female singer, she's got a nice voice. The instrumentals can be hit or miss, but basically imagine like a Norse warrior screaming. That's the male singer. And like sometimes he's okay to listen to, but most of the time I can't tolerate him. He's not as bad as the Karsa guy. The guy who does the Malzahn music, but it's like, oh, your song would be so good if your lead singer wasn't singing.
I see, but I cannot see. She weeps, but she does not look at me. I cannot read this.
That Karsa, it's such a shame. That guy does that Malzahn metal. Because his songs are good, the lyrics are good, his choice of singing style is not.
Well, I think metal as well, a lot of people, like you said, they like to feel it, right?
Yeah.
You listen to it loud and you feel it more than worry about the...
Well, that's the whole joke. When I listen to Sabaton, my neighbors do too.
Yeah, but Sabaton, actually, you don't have to. Sabaton is one of the rare metal bands that... It's the reason I don't like most metal, actually. It's not... Well, I don't like distorted vocals. That's part, and a lot of metal is distorted vocals, but not all metal is. Yeah. Like power metal and symphonic metal, typically they don't do that. But no. I still don't like it because, like Dragon Force, they're all like symphonic metal and whatnot.
Yeah.
And Rhapsody of Fire as well. But the lyrics are basically about their D&D campaign, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
And
It's so far away.
I don't care about their D&D campaign, right? Like,
Yeah.
I just don't have the slightest interest in their D&D campaign. But Sabaton songs are about something.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that your song has to be about something I know about. It's just, even like Nightwish, right? Their songs are about emotions and love and loss and that sort of thing. But they do it, he chooses, Thomas, I think is the writer, he chooses words that sound good. He doesn't actually choose words that make any sense.
Yeah, that's the same with Visions of Atlantis, like that clock song. I mean, there's a song...
No, I think they make a lot more sense, actually.
Well, they do make a lot... Some of their songs don't, but a lot of their songs do.
But like, Nightwish, none of, like... what,
their greatest song, that, like, the 11-minute song.
Ever Dream. Ever dream away with me just once and you're free. So, like, it's not proper English. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. It sounds mildly like you're trying to flirt with the singer, maybe, at best.
No, that was very, like, Nightwish's most famous song ever. That's called Ghost.
Ghost Love Score?
Yeah, Ghost Love Score is an experience, not really a song.
Yeah, like, I don't... The lyrics don't seem to be about anything really that much. I like Nemo.
No, you're right. I did do Visions of Atlantis bad. Their songs actually have quite a bit to them.
Like, but Nemo even. How I Wish for... Was it? Oh, how I wish for driving rain. Oh, how I wish I could dream again. It's like, what is that about exactly?
You should listen to Japanese rapping.
But I like songs that are about something. Like, I don't...
That's why I say you should listen to Japanese rapping, because when they're rapping English, they don't care about meaning. They're just making rhymes happen when they rap in English, and it's an experience.
But I think with... Well, I mean, I could just listen to Pitbull.
Yeah.
Like, take the picture of that with a Kodak. Oh, that was good. I'll go that with a Kodak. Or however it goes. Now, the funny thing is, I like... No, there's a reason, I think. Okay, so I like Two Steps from Hell to a degree, right? But I think the reason there is that Two Steps from Hell is actually telling a story with their music.
Yeah.
There is... But you could say Nightwish is doing the same. And I think they are, but the difference is their words are meant to be a musical instrument, not lyrics. And so if you just don't listen to the lyrics, suddenly Nightwish works.
Yeah.
But the problem is, because they have lyrics, I listen to it. Whereas Two Steps from Hell, when they have lyrics, they are in, like, Hungarian, or they...
or actually a story in the song.
But they distort and make it hard to hear.
Well, Children of the Sun.
Children of the Sun.
We are, like, it's very powerful lyrics. We are the children of the sun, fighting for everyone. That is one of the lyrics.
But their lyrics are distorted. So, for example, Hymn of the Cherubim.
Yeah.
By Tchaikovsky.
Yeah.
It's a sentence that takes 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, at that point, the words aren't words anymore. And that works.
Yeah.
And Two Steps from Hell, they do that as well. Like, Never Back Down. Let them charge. We will something at the something.
The lyrics don't matter as much.
If I have power. Right, they're dumb lyrics.
Yeah.
But you can't really make out what they're saying.
And then that's why you make fun of Go Back to the Earth.
Light shine on my empty cheetah away. Yeah. Maybe we should go back to the earth.
And life will grow.
Maybe we should play... No.
Crawl in the dirt.
Crawl in the dirt before we run. Or, Battle born. Battle born.
Then there's Song 1,000 Voices, which I know you're not the biggest fan of.
I don't know. Their live concert changed my opinion on a lot of their songs, so I don't remember.
The 1,000 Voices... They're chanting. It's like a lot of chanting. It's literally the name of the song.
Well, I think, no offense to Nick, but I think actually the main problem is I like Thomas Version music, not Nick Phoenix music.
Well, this is a Thomas song. It's 1,000 Voices.
Yeah, but I think, well, I do like some of Nick's music as well. Like I actually like Battleborn, not the one with lyrics though.
Yeah.
I like the lyric-free version, and he also.
That's actually something else though on the lyrics. You're talking about Sabaton. Have you ever listened to symphonic Sabaton songs? They just do an orchestral symphonic version without their lyrics.
No.
They are amazing songs.
No, their songs are... Well, I think...
with the lyrics are really good, and they sing them well, but even without the lyrics, their songs are amazing.
No, I think Soldier of Heaven is probably their best song from a sort of I don't know what you would call it, technical perspective maybe. It's not quite, but it's like as a produced piece of music, lyrics aside,
Yeah.
without meaning, I think Soldier of Heaven is probably their best. That or maybe Father, because Father has those backup vocals which are, well, also Christmas Truce has those amazing backup vocals. But Father has that very creepy sort of almost breathing wailing.
Yeah.
Boom boom wah, boom boom wah, boom.
Yeah.
And then Soldier of Heaven, just it's like pop and metal combined in the best of both.
Yeah.
And the lyrics of Soldier of Heaven just make you tear up.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, Sabaton's real, right? The stuff they talk about is
Yeah.
real. So you read the comments, and there's like people on the Soldier of Heaven video. This one guy said his grandfather fought at the in the Alps,
Yeah.
what the song's about, and he was almost everyone died there. Like all the
Yeah.
Italians, all the Hungarians, they all died. And so his grandpa was one of the very few people that lived. And apparently, for his entire life, he would just wake up in the middle of the night and say, "I have to go back." And he'd just start getting dressed, and then his wife would be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, it's over, it's over."
So I don't know if Sabaton's done I think they have. He was a Canadian soldier. He's sort of on the level of Sergeant York.
Chum pong bang ba wo.
No, he has one eye, and he captured a German city, a French city by himself.
Invoke the spirit of the wind.
It's not the
Something,
native guy.
something behind enemy lines. I mean, that guy was hardcore too.
If they have done a song on him, like if they haven't, they should. They probably have.
They did a song on that French dude that like just took out everyone on his own.
Yeah, but
No, he didn't have to kill anyone. But yeah.
at the Remembrance Day ceremony, one of the veterans there, he'd come all the way. Like he moved to Canada, but he grew up in France. And that Canadian soldier liberated his town in World War II, and that's why he went to Canada and joined our military. Is because this guy, and he's like talking about how this guy basically saved their village.
I don't think they have done a song about.
Oh, they really should. Like,
There's one called
it's what he did is insane. Where he had grenades, he had a ton of grenades, and so he ran through the French village, throwing grenades in the air and having them explode. And he shouted at different points at different timbres, and he made it sound like a whole army was invading the village. And so the Germans ran away, and so he captured a village by himself. And also, he blew up, I think because of an anti-tank mine, and they were going to honorably discharge him. Basically, you're too injured to keep on fighting, one of your eyes doesn't work. And so he escaped their medical facility, ran away, was found by a bunch of French nuns who nursed him back to health.
Wasn't that a French guy that did all that?
This is a French Canadian.
Oh, so okay. They have a song called "Citizen" or something, which might be about him then. Yeah.
He got nursed back to health, then he rejoined and kept fighting. Then after World War II, he went back to being a soldier again in like Vietnam and led a whole force. But they tried to make him retire twice, I think, in World War II because of injury. And both times he escaped the people trying to like tend him so he could go back to fighting.
Yeah, Sabaton has that combination of it's real
Yeah.
and it's very well executed as well.
Yeah.
Like there's other bands that do songs about historical events, and very few of them I think are like the only other one I think that's very good is the he was that singer back in the 20s, that country singer. He's the British kept on coming and we kept on shooting them down, and that guy. And he also did the Bismarck. He also did
We're sinking the Bismarck.
We've got to sink the Bismarck. Yeah.
I think
And he did that very mournful country song.
Blind Guardian, their one historical song is really well done.
Oh, about Cromwell.
Yeah.
Sort of. It's probably about Cromwell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could probably apply to several figures in history,
I think it's
but
very much Cromwell's.
mostly there's probably some Chinese guys that could fit,
Yeah.
like Yellow Turban Rebellion type stuff or something.
That song, like that's a different, like the lyrics of that, like it sounds good on a lot of different, but the lyrics of that song speak to the human spirit of being oppressed. We can't take it anymore. Our voices will
So
be heard.
I've seen multiple interpretations of this song.
But just that line, we can't take it anymore. Our voices will be heard. Like that thing, I just think about that line so much.
Okay, so I think it sounds like I know your interpretation, but I've seen an interpretation of the song that it is a conversation between the general and the king.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is.
I thought it was all the same guy.
No, it's the voice of the revolution.
They pity their king and they
The let them curse my name is both people. It's Cromwell and the king saying that.
That would have been what, John the first or second?
Yeah, the guy who
put on the shirt.
Yeah, steadies nerves. It's both of them. Because they had an army surrounding his execution, and like they had a huge amount of defense, and they killed the other half or arrested the other half of the sitting party. Is he actually didn't do all that much wrong? Like,
you know,
he was unlucky, and he was a scapegoat, and people recognize that, and that's why Cromwell's children were chased out and weren't king, and his kids were returned. Because he made some mistakes for certain, but he basically inherited a huge amount of problems and got them into a war that turned out really bad for them and almost bankrupt the country. And so that's part of the reason why he did bad. But it's basically, he wasn't a bad man, but he was in a very bad time and he made mistakes, but he wasn't a tyrant.
So they, let's see. You know, it's funny.
And that's also why they didn't execute his children. That's another reason why they didn't execute his children, because he wasn't a tyrant. If he was a tyrant, his line would be wiped out.
The problem was more the nobility and the...
The problem is just they needed a scapegoat, and he was the best option. And then Cromwell and his cronies jumped onto that, and that whole political movement used that to get into their own line of power. But the might of the... they weren't liked.
I've got some... You know, Cromwell was... maybe you could say the same about a lot of people. But, you know, he did what needed to be done in some sense. But he was... Yeah, I can...
He was well aware of his own flaws as well.
Do you think when his portrait, right, he said, "Draw me warts and all," right? Do you think that was a political stunt in of itself?
Definitely.
Like a sort of... It wasn't, "I'm a man of the people." It was just, this will go down well in the history books. Because I respect him for that. But at the same time, I wonder if he did that on purpose.
Well...
Probably.
I like to think of scenarios of interesting things and how it works them. And one of my thoughts is you have a king. I wonder if this has happened in history, right? And he's a very political intrigue king. And he's not good with a sword. And basically a noble accuses him of, like, "You're a poof. You don't fight with a sword. You don't lead the armies. You just sort of sit back here. And you sit on the throne, you command us, and you'll never die for us." And so he challenges the king to a duel because he just wants to disrespect the king, dishonor the king. And the king goes, "All right, I accept your duel." And the king says, "It'll be to the death or till submission, whatever." And so he's like, "Okay." And they have their little scuffle. And he disarms the king and he's holding the sword to the king's neck. He's like, "Yield." And the king's, "I will not yield." And he walks back and sits back down on his throne and sort of just Jarl sits there. And it's like, "I will not yield to you, nor will I ever yield my kingdom." And basically he's expressing the kingdom needs him so much that this noble has to yield himself because the king's not going to back down. Or you can kill the king and reap the consequences of that duel and everything that'll come with it. And so the king's so confident in his position of how important he is that he's like, "Yeah."
Well, weren't you saying there was that one dude that, commanded the sea?
That was King Canute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he did something similar.
He's like, "Yeah, sea, move," and then it doesn't, and he's like, "Yeah, see?"
"I'll stop the sea." He said, "I'll stop the tide from flowing."
Yeah. It's like, "See, I'm serving God's will. I can't go against it."
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. I feel like you really got to have that's hard to... I don't know. That seems weak. You got to spin it well, I guess.
Yeah. Canute probably did. He was good at that.
So what parts are the king's lyrics, though, in Curse My Name? So there's... the dancing... it seems like it's pure Cromwell. Take him down, remove his crown. The king's not saying that.
That's the people. The people is take his crown, bring him down, and we won't take any more. That's the people.
There's blood everywhere. His days are coming. Oh, you be aware now the trial is near, it's close at hand. The masquerade is over, it ends. That seems very Cromwell.
I think let them curse... This might be but let them curse my name, but remember the truth.
Yeah.
That's not Cromwell. That's the king. The king is aware he's a scapegoat. He's saying, "Let them curse my name on these blasted pages of history."
See, I've
but
always
remember the truth. And the truth is the king actually wasn't a bad person.
see the way I see it is it's all Cromwell, including that part. So a lot of people, I think, they do interpret the refrain is the king,
Yeah.
but Cromwell was a bad guy. Like,
Yeah.
but he wasn't. He was a bad guy serving a good cause, right? So there's a maybe I'm too influenced. There's a series called the Powder Mage trilogy.
Yeah.
There's a character in it, Thomas, who's based on Cromwell, and he goes and he kills the king and he starts a massive war. And when people come in, he's like sitting on the throne with the king's blood on his hands, and they're like, "You've just caused horrible chaos and destruction." He's like, "I know, and I'll take that burden. It has to be done. This king was a tyrant."
Well, it could be both of them are saying, let them curse my name.
And so maybe I'm giving Thomas too much Cromwell influence, or Cromwell too much Thomas influence or something. But it seems like Cromwell's like, I'm going to be because Cromwell was a tyrant that the people didn't like, right? But so Cromwell's like, I'm going to be the tyrant that people need. Let them curse my name. That's how I see it. But I guess the let them curse my name could be the king as well.
Well, also the song can be both of them. Like the song it doesn't have to be this is this person's part, this is this person's part. It can just be the whole dialectical. Besides, I think for the part of the people. Because there's definitely, when they're doing the chanting, that is the people chanting. That is the people's will.
I saw that as like Cromwell as well, because I see Cromwell as the voice of the people, sort of. I see Cromwell as the scapegoat of the revolution, in a sense. He's the guy that gets all the dirty work done, and then the people can say, "Oh, we don't like that, but we do like the results, but we don't like that." And I don't like ends justifying the means.
They also didn't like the results. Oh, it's a mess of history.
But because you could say that is an interesting point, isn't it? If was Cromwell just an ends justify the means type character, and in which case, or was he more of a garbage man? It's a dirty job someone's got to do. So it's not that the ends justify the means; it's that this will have to be done no matter what. I will be the one to do it. And is that how everyone looks at themselves? Like when
I would give that to him, but his legacy. Like knowing the history of his legacy. Now the history can be marred by the loyalists, which I will say.
History. Who said it? It was Aristocracy. She's a historical YouTuber. She was saying, history isn't written by the winners. It's not written by the losers. It's written by the historians.
Yeah. So he could have been painted poorly on this, but the legacy of Cromwell, of the puritanical age that he ran, of how hated he was by the people after he took over. Like, Churchill, how he ran the country, and then basically after the war he's kicked out. After Cromwell got rid of the king, they should have gotten rid of him. Like, he could not run things. But he did. And that was what went wrong. Because he was a revolutionary, not a leader. And that's actually the thing that happens with a lot of revolutionaries, is they're revolutionaries, they're not leaders. But they fought for it, so they're going to take the power. And then they're a terrible leader.
Yeah, it's basically all of them. Like, I'm trying to think of...
Americans.
Oh, like...
George Washington.
Yeah, George Washington's like the one exception.
And he didn't want to be president.
Václav Havel, sort of. Fidel Castro stayed in power for a long time. So that means something. Stalin stayed in power for a long time. So, there's a few, I guess, but...
Their legacy's not that... Like, Washington's the only one that I can think of.
Yeah, well, Washington was long enough ago that who knows?
Yeah.
maybe Castro will be looked on fondly in time. I mean, his obituary by the New York Times or something was already quite positive. And he was... And it also becomes tricky because we're in the American Empire and Castro is an enemy of the Americans. So it becomes tricky to say... Like, when we went to Cuba, they did not like Americans. It was a very different view. It was like... But all the writing and pictures didn't like Americans.
Yeah.
The people weren't going around saying, man, America's evil. So there is that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's no Americans in Cuba. There wasn't. So it's hard to say what they would have done if they saw Americans. And any Americans that got there are going to be pretending to be Canadians. So...
Yeah, that's the meta.
Well, for Cuba, especially. Because you...
That's why I say that's the meta for Cuba.
Because you wouldn't be allowed in otherwise.
Yeah.
Maybe you could pretend to be British, but... Or Australian or something, but...
That's the case for Afghanistan.
Yeah.
They see you're Westerner.
Yeah.
And you basically have to say, no, I'm not American. And then they'll hear your accent like, oh, you're not American.
But
Canadians, they're fine with the British and they're okay with the Canadians, but they don't like Americans.
Are they not aware that Canadians and British also were occupying them? Like, it wasn't just the Americans.
Yeah, but I don't know if you watched it. Callum Winton did tourism in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And he was going through the different graveyards. And one of them is the soldiers of the British Empire.
Yeah.
When Afghanistan was actually under them. And it's like furthermore British soldiers there. And it's a beautiful place that is immensely respected. And when he's talking to people about like a few of the locals, they're like, yeah, the British knew how to govern. Which seems to be the case for a lot of people. It's like, yeah, the British knew how to govern. So
I was also thinking of Himmler when he went to the concentration camps for the first time and went to see what they were doing. Guy, I think it was one of the prison guards, maybe was watching him, writing about him. He said he saw one of the pits where they were like bulldozing bodies into it or something like that. And his face just went drained of all color. He went super painful and he looked sick. And he went up to the podium and to give his speech, and he was saying, "You're doing the hardest work ever here. You know, I'm so sorry. This is what you have to be doing. You're doing good work. Keep it up." And that sort of. Yeah. And if that's the kind of person Cromwell was, that's not what you want. Like, because Himmler thought this is a horrible job, but it needs to be done. Yeah. But it didn't need to happen. No. It didn't need to happen. But you think about it, right? I don't think I've done it yet. A Steelman Hitler here. Your country has a foreign culture and foreign people in charge of the media and high up positions of government and the rebellion against the government and the head of all the unions. And not only that, if you talk to the union members, they're quite reasonable people. If you talk to the union leaders, they will lie and weasel their way out of everything. And all the slavery and human trafficking is done by this ethnicity in your country. And all the money is owned by this people. And you say, okay, what does that make your country? It makes your country a conquered nation, I would say, right? Yeah. And so you've been conquered by the Jews and by the French. But the Jews were there. So you're conquered by the Jews, essentially. Like, I think if you look at like South Africa, right? They had almost all black people, but all the government was white people, and they had that whole mess of, and they still have that mess where now there's all this anti-white sentimentality because if you have a minority in control of everything, people get really upset. I mean, if you have men disproportionately represented among CEOs, you have feminists losing their minds, right? And white people, then you have leftists losing, you have people losing their mind. If it's like, most CEOs are white men, right? And so obviously white men are the problem. And so these are the people in charge, so you're a conquered nation. You look at Canada, the First Nations aren't the prime ministers, they're not the media heads, they're not the... If where all your information comes from, if where all your power comes from and all your money, like those education, that's the last stronghold, I guess. And so I don't think the Jews were in education in Germany, but beyond that, so you have 3 of the 4 institutions that make up a country are non-Germans. And you say, okay, well then we're not a German country, we're a conquered nation, basically. And I think that makes sense. And so then you say we want to be German, so we have to get rid of the Jews. And you're like, okay, so you say, okay, no Jews can hold office. Because this is a German country, we want German principles. Because the other problem with Jews is their culture is incredibly resilient to change. So if a Irish person or British person moves to Germany, their children are Germans. Yeah. Maybe they drink a bit more tea than normal, but they're Germans. Yeah. Jews can spend 500 years in a country and they pass down their Jewish ways and their Jewish religion and their Jewish traditions. Not all of them. A lot of Jews defect, or they say, hey, I'm Jewish technically, but I don't follow the faith, or I don't do kosher. But Jews have these kosher laws, and they're a very resilient culture. They have to be because they're a nomadic culture, basically. They've never had a land since they lost Jerusalem, basically. Yeah. And they took Jerusalem from the Canaanites in the first place, so it wasn't theirs to begin with. Well,
it was the land of their fathers. If you go back to Exodus.
No. So Exodus, they were in Egypt.
No, so before Exodus, if you go back to Israel, the guy who...
Oh, right, yeah. If you go back to the guy who wrestled with God.
Yeah, if you go back to him...
He arm wrestled Samuel, the angel, yeah.
Michael.
Was it Michael he fought?
Yeah, he fought Michael.
Yeah, okay.
He wrestled with Michael, and Michael broke his hip.
Yeah. And Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob.
Yeah.
So if you go back to Jacob, that was the land of his father, and his father was... can't remember his father's name.
With his father Abraham?
Yeah, Abraham.
Yeah.
So that was the land of Abraham, and that land was given to Abraham by someone else. And
God?
No, not God.
Okay.
Well, God gave it to him, but also someone else gave that land to Abraham because Abraham was a beloved, very clever, very well-liked person.
Abraham was the progenitor of the Jews, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Jacob founded Israel and changed his name to Israel.
Yeah, so Jacob was Israel, and then a famine hit, and his people were starving. And so Jacob's favorite son, who was a minister in Egypt, took all the people into Egypt. And the Pharaoh loved his son because he is like this amazing minister who saved the country from the famine. But then when the Pharaoh died, the new Pharaoh basically kind of forgot what that guy did. And then generation after generation is like, oh, we got this class of people who make better things than the rest of us. This actually was in Egypt. These people are really clever. They have better flocks than us. They have better sheep. They have better clothing. The land they tend is better. And they have more children than us. They're going to outcompete us, so we're going to enslave all of them so they can't take over.
You know, it's funny. The reason...
And so they get enslaved, and then they just want to leave Egypt at that point, and they can't. And then Moses basically duels with the Egyptians' magicians until they let them leave. And
then they go and they kill all the Canaanites.
Yeah, the Canaanites are driven out. The Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites. It's actually like a lot of people are driven out. It's 8? No, it was 5 tribes were driven out.
The Samaritans, I think.
Yeah.
So the...
I'm currently listening to this.
Listening to what?
The Bible.
Oh.
So I just finished Exodus, and I'm on the part where he came down from Mount Sinai. Sinai, and they're going through all the laws, and he repeats it like 3 times. It's incredibly boring.
It's funny, the reason the Jews ended up in charge of like the money and media and that sort of thing a lot of the time, and bureaucratic positions, because they suck, like they're boring, right? Yeah. And they go against a lot of religions. But so it was like, we'll put the Jews in charge of it, and it's like, wait, why do the Jews have all the money and power?
Yeah, well, that's the same thing that happened in Egypt.
Yeah, so Hitler was in a very similar situation to the First Nations in Canada now, and to the black people in South Africa now, and to the non-French people in Canada now, to an extent. And so you want your country to actually have its own values again. Yeah. You want it to be your country. You don't want, like, all the papers were just full of propaganda. He used to love the news and read all these newspapers, but they just became propaganda pieces full, like socialist propaganda. Mm. And so the only papers he could read were the ones that actually were willing to speak the truth, and they also had a bunch of anti-Semitic stuff in them, which he didn't like, but he's like, okay, I'll ignore that bit, but I'll at least read this, and because it at least has the truth in it, even if they're anti-Semitic. So you kick all the Jews out of the positions of power, because they're controlling your country, they're a conquering people, and then you're in a war, and you say, okay, how do I get rid of these people? Where do I put them? What do I do? I can't just have enemies wandering around in my streets, so I'll put them in prison. And then it's like, okay, we're starving to death. We don't have any industry. We have these camps with like 13 million people or something. How do we feed these camps and run a war? And like, it's step by step by step.
Yeah.
And it's Hitler's sister, or maybe multiple of his sisters, said he never would have done this. Like he never would have, and maybe he never would have. But people just down the line, they're like, okay, well, we can't have them in positions of power, obviously. Like, yeah, obviously, okay, and well. Okay, it's a war. We can't have these people that we just took out of positions of power in the street. Like, they're going to be angry. So we got to put them somewhere. We'll deal with them after the war. They did that with the Japanese in America,
in Canada.
In Canada, it's like, okay, we'll just put them somewhere. And then it's like, okay, we had the highest Jewish population on Earth, and now we have these massive camps, and we're losing a war. What do we do? We've got, well, maybe. And one of the guards is like, maybe we don't give food to them first. Maybe it goes to the guards first. We just, and then some die. Okay, we'll just put them out back. And then it's like, well, this one camp, it's actually doing its job a bit better. And it's like, what are you guys doing? Well, maybe sometimes they go for a walk and they don't come back. If they've been acting up, like, okay, look, we can barely afford to feed you, and now you're starting a rebellion. We're going to shoot you. You're starting this rebellion. We're going to just take out these rebel rousers. And then you start streamlining it until you're making purpose-built chambers with gas for killing people. And you're like, wait, you wake up one day and you're like, how did...
And also... a few people see an opportunity going on of they can just be nasty, and then you have like the flamethrower divisions in Poland.
Yeah, well, you get certain you have the wrong people, like you have people like Joseph Engels was it, I think, isn't it? The doctor.
Yeah.
You just have the wrong people in the wrong positions,
Yeah.
and he wasn't. I don't think even he was like, I'm an evil person that's going to have fun torturing people. He's like, this is okay. Look, these people are going to die anyways. Let me see what I can do to just advance science. Because they're very, very progressive. The Nazis, like actually, the Nazis were very much about let's advance humanity as much as we can. So it's almost a bulletproof argument. Not the Holocaust, but the whole getting rid of Jews, right? The problem is, and it's the same problem people make with this. You can believe it, right? You can say we can't have the Jews in charge because we're a conquered nation, right? And you can say we can't have these white people in charge, we're a conquered nation. You can't have these non-First Nations in charge, we're a conquered nation. Canada's weird because the First Nations are actually a minority. Just they all died, so it gets a bit stranger there. But maybe we do it with the French people more. We can't have all these French people in charge because they're just this little minority. So that makes sense, and
they're French,
and they're destroying your country, right? Like I said, all the slavers were Jewish, all the socialists were Jewish, they're all these liars, and the media is liars, and the government is liars. They're trying to destroy your country, pinch it for every penny. These were awful leaders they had at the time. Yeah. They didn't have any money, they didn't have any food, they didn't have any space, and newspapers all lied to them and said it's the best year ever, and France is amazing, and it's like, no, France is crushing us into the dirt, and you're lying to our faces, so we don't have anything to eat. And very similar to now, like then I would think it was much worse. Hopefully I'll say it that way, but the media just was this mouthpiece of propaganda, and nobody was telling the truth. And so the Jews were awful, right? Except that's the trick right there, isn't it? It's not the Jews. It's not the white CEOs, male CEOs. It's not the white people in South Africa. Because the thing is, I'm not a CEO.
Yeah.
And most of those Jews aren't slave traders.
No.
It's like 100% of slave traders in Germany are Jews. That doesn't mean 100% of Jews are slave traders. And that's the trick right there.
Yeah.
100% or 499 out of 500 of the top CEOs are men or something like that. That doesn't mean that 499 out of 500 of men are CEOs.
Yeah.
You're looking at
a very small group of people who are CEOs.
You're looking at the extremes, and you're like, how many corrupt politicians and corrupt bankers and corrupt socialists and corrupt human traffickers were there in Germany, right? Like, let's say there's like 10,000, maybe. Let's say it's like there's like 13 million Jews or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like let's say the majority of Jews are evil. They have this evil faith that makes them evil, right? 60% of Jews are evil. 80% of Jews are evil. 90% of Jews are evil. Does that mean you shoot a Jew on sight? Maybe according to the Jewish faith, but like the Jews have that list of things whose existence cannot be tolerated, and they're
unclean,
and there's a lot of people on that list.
Yeah,
there's like a lot of cultures are on that list.
Yeah,
and a lot of those cultures aren't around anymore. But so you say these literal genocidal religion. Do we allow those people to walk around? And you say, well, yeah, because you can't condemn a man for the sins of his father. Like,
yeah. If I go, all right, I'm going to destroy Sodom. If there is 1,000 good people in Sodom, will you destroy it? Oh, if there's 1,000 good people, I won't destroy it. What if there's 100? Wouldn't it suck for those 100 to be destroyed? Okay, I won't destroy it. What if there's 10? Okay, I won't destroy it. What if there's 1? All right, find that one guy.
But I think
But that's the bargain with God there of don't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because there might be one good person in it.
But if you think that, lost it. But it's like the Jews. I guess it's just you have to be consistent. That if you think the Jews are a special sort of evil, then you also need to think. I suppose you could still have your worldview work. You could just say everything is simple. Men should be in charge. Jews are evil. White people should be in charge. But I think there's another aspect there, isn't there? I'm not thinking of it. If you're condemning a group by their worst, though, then you'd think you'd want to be consistent with that too, but you could just ignore it. But yeah, I think that is the trick. It's just all evil people are Jews, let's say. But not all Jews are evil. Like at its worst, right?
Yeah.
And if all Jews are evil, okay, let's say all Jews are evil. What now? What do you do about the evil Jews such that you don't match them okay, so the Jews are all evil. Let's have a Holocaust. That'll solve everything. But now the greatest villain in history are the Germans. And so now
Just goes to show how powerful they are.
the French need to Holocaust all the Germans. And so on and so on and so on. Because, so what we need is a group of selfless individuals.
Purity spiral?
No. We need you need a bunch of Nepalese monks, right? All of the Nepalese monks to go and kill all the Jews and kill all the Germans and then kill themselves. And then the cycle of violence ends. Except the Nepalese believe in reincarnation.
So you must hunt down the Avatar.
So we need...
Wherever he reincarnates.
Yeah. That's not going to last much longer, probably. That's kind of weird. We're seeing a...
He's gone, right?
No, he's around.
No, the other guy.
The Dalai Lama?
No, the guy who finds the Dalai Lama is gone.
No, the Dalai Lama finds the Avatar.
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But once the Dalai Lama dies, and the Avatar finds the Dalai Lama, I think it's like a back and forth. But they're separate right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Dalai Lama has found the Avatar yet. Although, I guess the Dalai Lama dies and the Avatar's like to one of the guards, "It's you." What? Now it's you. What the? No, now it's you. Just goes up to Xi Jinping. "You were the Dalai Lama all along." "I was. I'm so happy." "Wait, what?" "I just thought if I got rid of enough people, I would become the Dalai Lama." But wait, you're not even Nepalese. Ah, but my great-great-grandmother was Nepalese. So the Bible. I was reading the story of Job, and I don't know if you've gotten to that yet.
No.
It's very weird.
No, I'm at... like I said, I'm at all the laws.
Story of Job is very weird. It's possibly the oldest book in the Bible, I think. Okay, so Job is the richest and most respected man in all of Uz, I think is the land he lives in, which is a land that we have no idea where it is or what it was. Like, in the Bible, they didn't know what it was. They're like, okay, here's this land we've never heard of.
On the not knowing where things, we actually know where Eden was.
Do we?
Yeah. It's where Tigris and Euphrates flow from.
Oh.
And there's 4 rivers in that area, all flowing in different directions. And at their center is Eden. And Tigris and Euphrates is one of the rivers.
Tigris and Euphrates, yeah.
But so it's in that area.
But that's Sumer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that like Mesopotamia means between 2 rivers?
It's that's what it says in.
So like
in what I was listening to is Tigris and Euphrates are related to Eden.
Because like that's where Sumer was built, I think.
Yeah.
Huh. So,
it's somewhere in that area, anyways.
Well, no, it could very well be because in the story of Job, he has 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he has like 15,000 animals or something like that. A loving wife, and everyone's very rich and well respected. And during the harvest festival, although the way it was written, it sounded like it was constantly, but I think it was meant to be just during the harvest festival because otherwise it'd be ridiculous. His sons have a tradition where there's 7 of them, so every day of the week they invite all the other sons and their wives and their sisters to their house. And they have a giant feast. And then the next day will be like, "Now you come to my house and we have this great big feast." And they go around and around. And every day, Job doesn't go to these feasts for some reason, I guess. But he sacrifices a bunch of animals for his sons and says, "Please, God, forgive my sons for their sins and my daughters for their sins." Which, thanks for the vote of confidence, Dad, there. But
Well, it's ridiculously easy to sin in the Jewish faith, and how you absolve it is you feed priests your best animal in your flock. Like, actually, that's my interpretation, but it's sort of like there's 3 different kinds of sins, and one of them the animal's destroyed entirely, but for like the minor sin, they like burn the fatty parts of its like organs and then they eat it, and that is their right. And if the family's too poor to give them a sheep, then they give them a different animal. They give them 2 birds, and one bird is burnt, the other is eaten. If they're too poor to give them birds, they give them grain, and the grain is turned into pancakes, and then like some of the grain is burnt, and the priests eat the pancakes instead.
So Job isn't at
The parties.
When he gets, one of his servants comes running to him, and he says, "There was a storm, and all your animals died, and I was the only one of your shepherds who survived." And then another servant runs to him and says, "I was at your house, and your house collapsed from an earthquake," or something like that. "And everyone died. I was the only servant who survived, so I can bring you this message." And then a third servant comes running, and he says, "I was at your son's house, and a windstorm swept through and collapsed the building on them, and all your children and their wives and their husbands are dead, and all the servants are dead, and I was the only one who survived. And so, and at the start of it, of course, is
the bet between God and...
So God says to the devil, God has a meeting in the story of Job where he calls all the celestial beings to him. And the devil appears and he says, where have you been? And the devil says, I've been wandering here and there doing this and that. And that's how the devil always responds. And God always asks him, where have you been? And
it just makes me think of a detail Jordan Peterson pointed out of when in Garden of Eden, after they eat the fruit, they're naked and they realize it. And God usually goes for a walk with Adam. And Adam hides behind a bush because he's embarrassed of his nakedness. And God walks out there and says, Adam, where are you? It's not like God can see through bushes or omniscient or anything. I just love that little thing that he points out. It's like God's like, Adam, where are you? I can't see you. What? I'm here, my Lord. Why are you hiding behind a bush? Did you something you weren't supposed to?
Well, so that's the thing. So he talks to the devil and says, where have you been? And then Satan's very vague about his answer. Yeah. And then he says, look here, Satan, here's a man who has never sinned, who everyone respects. And Satan says, yes, and who worships me as you should. Like, he is my truest servant who worships me as me should. And Satan says to him, he only worships you because, he's selfish, basically. Because look at everything you've given him. You've given him 7 sons and 3 daughters, and you've given him all these animals and this loving wife, and you've given him the respect of all the people around him. Well, he wouldn't worship you if he lost everything.
Yeah.
And God says, well...
Bet.
God says, well, we want to see about that. And so he gives the devil permission to ruin Job's life. And so Job, he learns that everyone's dead. He tears out his clothes and he falls to the ground and he puts ashes and sand on his head. Yeah. As was a tradition at the time. Wearing an onion around your belt. And he's devastated. And he immediately goes and, I believe, sacrifices some animals. I'm not sure where he got them from, but because they all died. But
well, he might have had some money to buy some.
Yeah. So he goes and he sacrifices some animals and says, I'm sorry for my sins. I'm sorry, and please forgive me. And he's just devastated. And so time comes around where God has the meeting of all the celestial beings again. And Satan comes to him, or the devil, or whatever this creature is, comes to him again.
The enemy.
And says, where have you been? And he says, I've been wandering around here and there doing this and that. And he's like, and you see, and he says, well, I'd like permission now to attack him again, basically. And God
kick him while he's down.
And God says, go for it, buddy. And so the devil destroys his health. He causes this horrible rash and sores to go over him. And so people...
just imagine the devil just runs up and kicks him in the groin and then runs off.
And so his own wife can barely stand to look at him.
Oh, she wasn't killed in the house collapse?
And so, first weird detail, besides the devil thing. First weird detail is he's covered in all these horrible sores.
Yeah.
And so he goes to the rubbish pit and grabs a shard of pottery and begins scraping at his sores. And I think that has got to be the least sanitary solution to your problem ever. No wonder you're sick.
Well, he's unclean now. If you're covered in sores, you're unclean and you have to be banished until you can be better.
Maybe. And also, from the rubbish pit, don't you have some fresh... You could just smash a jar and...
You're not allowed to touch clean things if you're unclean.
And why are you scraping your... all of it seems weird. But anyways, so his friends hear of his plight, and they all live in different cities. And so they commune with each other somehow. They get together, and they all travel to meet Job at once. So they all come together.
Yeah.
And they see him. He has nothing. Like, he's lost all his wealth. He's lost his lands. He's lost the respect of everyone.
Yeah.
The wise men that used to ask him for advice, they no longer talk to him. The lowest ruffians now look down on him and spit on him.
Yeah.
And his friends come and they see him in this horrible state, and they immediately tear their clothing and go down and put ashes and sand on their hair, and they cry and they mourn and they weep and they wail. They sit in silence with him for 7 days and 7 nights. They're just devastated with him. And at the end of the 7 days, so they mourn with him, and it's deeply respectful. And then at the end of the 7 days, they throw that goodwill out the window because they start saying to him, look, clearly you sinned, because God wouldn't do this to someone who didn't sin, right? Because the way the world works is if you do good things, God rewards you. If you do bad things, God punishes you. So just repent. Please repent. Like, we're your friends. We want you to repent, please. This is horrible this happened to you, but just repent and then we can go back to normal. And Job says, I've done nothing wrong. I am a good man and I know it. put me on trial, and I would go in front of God himself and prove my case. And I would say, I've done nothing wrong, and you have misjudged me. It's not my fault. And his friends are like, whoa, no, you sinned. And they try to convince him of God's might and God's all-knowing. And so obviously God knows that you did something wrong. Just admit it. Come on, God, you can't hide this from God. And the things they talk about, they say, like, God is the one who fought Radam and won, and God tamed the Leviathan, and God fought the sea and stopped it from swamping the world, and he pushed it back, and he closed the gates of death, and you keep going against God, and you're going to meet King Death, and he is going, and it's like, Radam, King Death, the gates of the dead, God fighting the sea? What is going on here? So I looked some of this stuff up, and it's all Marduk. Like, God is Marduk, basically, in the story of Job. Like, Marduk fought a creature called Lethov or something like that, which was this giant sea monster, Leviathan. Radam is another giant sea monster that Marduk defeated. And fighting the sea, that's like, it's like, wait, God fought the sea? Didn't he separate the sea from the firmament? But in this story,
he fought chaos.
He fought chaos and pushed it back from the lands as it was encroaching. And so he's very much like Hermes Trismegistus or something like that. Like, he fought like, Radam was a dragon. And so he killed this dragon, and he wrought from it, like, knowledge in the earth, basically. It's very much that same story of Marduk goes and kills Tiamat.
Yeah.
And the gates of the dead is a Sumerian, Mesopotamian myth that... And King Death would have been Ishtar's father, I guess. And so... And Inanna's father. It's very... And the other thing is, like, when they say God fought Radam, it's like, it's not like, God just squashed the thing. It's like he put up his dukes, and they were going back and forth, and so that's really weird. It's like God is not this all-powerful being. He's like he's a hero.
Yeah.
He's like Marduk, or Hermes, or Horus.
Yeah.
They all seem like the same person, really. And his friends and Job keeps saying, no, I'm innocent. And then Job says something. So the story gets mocked a lot because Job gets more kids at the end, right?
Yeah.
And he gets like 10 times as many animals at the end.
And 10 wives.
No, his wife lives through the whole thing. And he gets the same amount of kids back. He gets 7 sons and 3 daughters. But people have mocked about it. But Job is saying to his friends, if I have done something wrong, why didn't God punish me? Children shouldn't have to suffer for the sins of their father. Like, Job is devastated. He's like, God, strike me down dead. I'm just waiting to die. I have nothing to live for. My life is almost over, and yet you won't let me die. And like, strike me down here. And so Job is devastated that his children died. Because he's like, you should have killed me, not my children, if I did something wrong. My children didn't do anything. And so they keep arguing back and forth, and Job keeps saying, no, I'm innocent, and God made a mistake here. God's wrong. I could argue my case to God. So this massive amounts of arguments back and forth. And then some random bystander comes in, and he's like much younger than all of them, because I guess Job is like late middle aged, and his friends are the same age as him. So this young man comes in, and he's like, I didn't speak because you guys are older, and I want to show respect to my elders, but I can't hold my silence anymore, and you guys are all wrong. It's like, who is this kid? Like, you just see the most devastated man on earth and his best friends, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to insert myself in that conversation.
Yeah.
And why is he there? Like, Job lives on the biggest lot of land in his country. It's like, I was just trespassing, and I saw you guys arguing about this thing very personal, so I thought I would just butt in. So the guy comes in, and he says, God is better than all of you, and you should shut up, and you're wrong. And Job's like, no, I'm right. And then God's like, whoa. And God just pops in, I guess. There's not really any transition. It's just God starts talking. And he says to Job, like, these are his words, more or less. It's like, were you there when the first rain fell? Do you know how to make the storms thunder? Do you know when the winds should blow so that the seeds go across and land on the mountain? Do you understand the tides of the sea? Were you there when I bound Leviathan? Have you seen Behemoth, that creature that I have tamed? Like, he basically says, I was there when the deep magic was written. But he basically says to Job, how dare you? I know everything. I know what I'm doing, and don't judge. Don't question me. And so Job says, I'm so sorry, my Lord. I'm so sorry. And he goes down. He begs for forgiveness. And I think that's a bit rich, right? Like, Job's life has been destroyed from God's permission by the devil. And then Job is like, oh man, this sucks. And God's like, hey, you suck.
Yeah.
Not me. You. This is on you. And then, this is the really weird part, though. Then God says to Job's friends, how dare you not believe your friend? He is an honest man, and he's done nothing wrong. And you guys are just going around saying he's a sinner. And so you have sinned, and Job will have to sacrifice animals to absolve you of sins. Because you have questioned your friend. So it's like, Job, don't question me. Hey, don't question your friend. And it's very weird. And then Job makes sacrifices for his friends to be forgiven. And he has 7 new sons and 3 new daughters. And he gets this massive herd of animals back. And he names his daughters something like incense, jewelry box, and flower or something like that. But they're like the 3 most beautiful Hebrew words or something, I guess. I don't know why jewelry box is one of them. Like, it's like if we, like, what's our most beautiful word? Diarrhea or something?
Well, it could be after the super awesome box that holds the covenant.
No, it was, it's like a box for holding, like, incense or jewelry or something. Jewelry or something. But, made from lime wood, maybe? Linden wood?
You know how, like, the Ark of the Covenant in media is like this giant box made of gold that looks epic and it's covered in jewels? Do you know why we make it look like that? Because that's exactly how it's described. Every detail of that damn thing is described.
It's missing the tent.
Yeah, it is missing its tent. But like every detail of that silly thing is described.
Yeah, no, I've got in the Secret Teachings of All Ages. There's pictures of it. So he basically names his daughters the greatest possible gift.
Yeah,
right. And his sons are great men. He lives for another. So he was about to die basically, but he lives for another 140 years after this moment, and so he's rewarded for his efforts. And there's so much about that story that is like, this is much older than Judaism.
Well, that's really weird. Like his lifespan, because it like the early part of the Bible, it tracks how long people live, and their lives do get shorter and shorter over time. Sort of like the men of the West, which is very much what Tolkien did on purpose. But like, what's his name? Old Men is basically named after him. Methuselah.
Yeah,
he's not the oldest of his line. Like, the guys who were born before him lived way longer. It's just, of his line in particular, Methuselah lived for quite a while.
I've heard if you do something, like if you make it a kind of month or something instead of years, it actually makes quite a bit of sense. Like, they live to like 70 and 90 and 110 and stuff like that. Like, basically, there's a theory that it's translated wrong there slightly. But yeah, no, they do live less and less and less. Noah is Noah's the Denethor of his generation.
Yeah.
He lives a lot longer than normal. The story of Job, God is more of this mythic hero type.
Yeah.
And then the lesson of Job is that Job shouldn't have questioned God, but also that his friends should have stuck by him all the same. Yeah. And he mourns the death of his children strongly. He says, why did you punish the children and not me? Oh, that's the other thing. God says to the devil every time, do whatever you want to Job, but do not kill him. Well, actually, no. The first time he says, do whatever you want to Job, but do not do him no harm. And then the second time he says, do whatever you want, but don't kill him.
Nice.
And I think the other interesting thing, I read this Christian interpretation, which is that the worst thing the devil could do is kill all his children. And then the disease was just kicking him while he's down.
Yeah.
But that's not how I read it. Like, reading the story, it seems more like the people who wrote the story really understood devastation is something you can mourn. And you might be mourning it for a very long time. But it's behind you, right? Whereas illness is something that is with you constantly. And I'm not saying one is worse than the other. What I'm saying is that they're different kinds of torment.
Yeah. So, I've gone past Exodus, as I say, I'm in that part. And at the very beginning, there's this very cool part. I can't remember exactly, but you know, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, or like the triumvirate of heaven. So before even Jesus is born, that triumvirate actually exists.
Yeah.
And when God creates...
Trinity.
Yeah, the Trinity. When God creates the world, the Trinity is talked about briefly. And it's 1 is 3 and 3 is 1 is basically... like, is basically spelled out. So there's like 3 different gods, but they're the one God. And then throughout the story, because they're in at different points, it seems like there's a bunch of different gods. Mm-hmm. So there's the God that created the world, the all-powerful God. And then it proceeds into the story of Adam, Eve, and that God. And he's still the God that created the universe. And so we get past that God, and there's the God of Noah, who's still the God of Adam and Eve. He destroys everything. He resets it. And then there's the God of Abraham, who, the God of my father. And Abraham, the God of Abraham's like, you won't take any gods from me. And people always say this God of my father, and then Jacob's this the God of my father. He never calls it his own God. And this God's really lenient. He's basically like, do good by me, worship me, build me like pillars and stuff, and I'll make sure your life is good. And trust me, that's basically what he says. And Jacob has his whole own story with God, and wrestles with God, and eventually Jacob accepts God, because Jacob at the start didn't accept God. And so there's that weird God that bargains with his people. And then Jacob's favorite son, that's also the son, the God of his father. So there's that God. This God you can bargain with, and he likes you, your mates, there's other gods. He doesn't like those other gods. He's more powerful than all of them because he's God.
And it's the God that fights the magician.
Yeah, well, there's the God of Moses. So that God comes along, and he tells them, all right, there is a bunch of magicians. It's basically God sends something nasty to Egypt, and then the Pharaoh's basically, how do I know that's just not wizards doing this, and it's your so sick God? And so he commands, it's kind of ridiculous. So a bunch of fleas come out of the desert and start biting everyone. It's horrible. And I can't remember if the magicians do or not, but they basically make fleas come out of the desert and bite everyone in Egypt. It's like, see, we can do that too. And then God makes the rivers turn to blood. And the magicians are like, yeah, we can do that. And they make the rivers turn blood. And it's eventually God starts doing stuff that the magicians can't do. And that's when that goes through.
Like killing all the children in the city.
Yeah, well, there's also the whole thing of God hardens Pharaoh's heart. And so he's like, Pharaoh's ready to let people go, and then God makes it so his heart's hardened, so he doesn't.
Yeah, that part's weird too.
And there's a lot of interpretations about that whole part of the story, which I'm not getting into. But anyway, so there's that God, who he's still actually kind of the God of Abraham. And he's this vengeful God, but he's there. And then there's the God after Exodus, who led them out of the desert. The God that comes down in a pillar of clouds to talk with Moses. The God that you can't look at the face of, but you can look at the back of. Because if you look at his face, he'll kill you. And this God is weird. He's like, he gives them the commandments. He gives them all the laws. He tells them all the different sins. He tells them how to live their lives, how the priests will live. And the things that he's not letting them do, like their ancestors did. Like Abraham did it. He married his cousin. Jacob married his cousin. And the God of the mountain, the cloud God, says you can't do these things. He gives them all these laws. He's this...
God of the mountain.
Kind of is what he is.
Elagabal. That means the God of the mountain.
Oh.
Elagabal. He's also known... They got rid of the of the part, which is...
Ball.
So, just mountain. Ball.
Well, actually, that's one of the things. So the fire god, Moloch, is... people come into Israel that worship Moloch, you will kill them. And that's one of the laws, is Moloch worshippers aren't allowed in my land. So that's the law of this new god. But he still talks about Moloch, the fire god, and he calls him the fire god.
In some books, they're not in the Bible. They might be in the Torah. God is the youngest member of the Council of the Gods. And through his heroism, they make him their leader, which is very similar to Zeus.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's that weird god that I've gotten to. And then we go back to what I've learned from church, and there's three more gods that I know of. There's the god of the stories before Jesus, who's kind of a wacko. He's very wishy-washy. He does it like the story of Job from the Bible. He does these things, he performs some miracles.
I wouldn't say it's wishy-washy, I think it's like unknowable.
Yeah, unknowable. He performs... So there's that god. Then there's the god during the life of Jesus. So Jesus is God incarnated flesh, or the Son of God.
Yeah.
But Jesus shows up, and this God is basically, all right.
And the Son of God.
And the Son of God, yes. Through miracles will be performed by Jesus, and it's the will of God. And Jesus' interactions with the world is now how God interacts with the world. And he sends his messengers. And this is a God that basically sent mortal form of himself to guide the world. Then there's post-Jesus God, which is the Watcher, who just sits and observes and no longer, like, maybe intervenes here or there because people say they have these experiences. And there's some stories after Jesus, I'm not as familiar with them, but, like, God might have interactions with that. But
like Islam, the entire religion.
Yeah, so there's that thing there.
That's the Archangel Gabriel talking to Muhammad.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that as much, but it seems there's this God after Jesus. There's the post-Jesus God, but they all seem really different, like completely different entities in some points. Like especially the contrast between the God of Eden, who created everything, the God of Abraham, the God of my fathers, and the God of Moses. Like they're super different.
One of the things that we don't tend to do these days, that priests used to do back in the day, was when two nations were united through marriage or war, is the priests of both nations would get together. They'd have a brainstorming session.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, okay, who do you got? And they'd be like, okay, I got Plutus. He's god of wealth and really little used and kind of associated with the underworld, but not really. They're like, okay, we got Serapis. He's the god of the underworld. So Serapis and Pluto are the same? Yeah, okay, cool. And then, Serapis is actually more close to Zagreus. What's his name?
Zagreus?
The guy in Hades?
Yeah.
Yeah, Serapis is very similar to him. Because Zagreus is considered to be, is basically Jesus.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, he is actually.
Like, I believe originally when the priests got together, they were actually saying Jesus and Zagreus are the same. Because they did that even back during, like, the early Christian times.
Yeah.
They were like, okay, how do we combine with the...
They did that when the Christians were taking over France, basically saying, commit to Christianity or you die. That's how the Christians took over France.
Yeah.
So they did that. And then they're like, yeah, but we still really like Christmas. It wasn't called Christmas then, but we still really like Winter's Night. Let's call it Winter's Night. It's like, all right, that's the birth of Jesus.
Yeah, and who is Jesus?
Yeah.
Because who, like, H-U, who?
Yeah.
Who is the sun god that was reborn in the tree? Yeah.
Yeah.
And was hung on the tree. Yeah, so who is Jesus? And so you combine them. And so, yeah, Christians were doing it too. They're like, Jesus is Serapis, Jesus is Zagreus.
And even later, when the the Vikings converted to Christianity.
Like Baldur is Jesus.
Well, Baldur is Jesus, but they actually, one of the other things...
Or Odin, I guess.
Well, one of the other things they did, it's not, they didn't have some comparisons, but the more official thing is, Ragnarok happened.
Right.
God reforged the earth.
Right.
And that is the world we have. So Ragnarok was what was. Those gods were. So Odin was All-Father. But now the true and one God has come to the lands after Ragnarok and remade the world. And know how there's Middenheim and Hiflheim. He combined all them together into one, and that's Earth now. Yeah,
so a lot of these things, a lot of the stories in the Bible are probably Sumerian myths, and they're just all, this is all God now. Because these are the best ones. This Horus and Zeus, they're all not the same God. Yeah. I've got a time-sensitive medicine I need to take, so...
Okay.
Wrap it up there, I guess?
Yeah, we can wrap it up there.
Yeah.
And that is what AI will do to the world.
Yeah.